The outskirts of Seoul. August 2035. 5 years have passed since the catastrophe that befell all of humanity. From that day on, unidentified monsters began to pour out of gates, appearing all over the world. Have humans really fallen to the level of nothing more than prey for a single meal? Certainly those who have awakened would be stung by such words. After all, it was thanks to their efforts that 40% of humanity was still surviving. The young man sitting on the roof of a dilapidated building looked down at the road. Huge monsters were walking between the buildings. The guy understood that the barriers had their limits. One only had to look around. Overpopulation in safe zones led to a shortage of essential supplies. Outside, there were 6 S-class monsters and 1 A-class monster moving around. The young man looked through his binoculars and said that everything was exactly as Hyung-gi-chol had said. A sudden gate appeared in one of the city's squares. Following that, a person appeared from the sudden gate. The young man in knight's armor said happily that he was finally able to return. The first thing that caught the knight's eye was the huge number of monsters in this ruined city. The young man was surprised by what was happening here. Why were these creatures still here? The man with binoculars on the roof of the building was delighted to hear that the knight had returned to the city. The young man realized that the heat was just beginning. The knight activated the sword nest skill. He understood that in this case, at least 10 high-ranking hunters would be needed to defeat such a large number of monsters. The skill was used successfully, and the energy swords attacked all the monsters in the vicinity. As a result, 6 high-level monsters were destroyed in just an hour. Now there was only 1 A-class monster left. Even if all 5 S-class hunters in the world got together, such a task would be impossible. The young man looked and thought that now he knew what the true power of a master spearman was. The guy also thought that if he waited a little longer, that power could be his. The knight used the demonic blade skill and struck the A-class monster multiple times. The knight stopped. Behind him lay the monster's body, cut into pieces. The young man with binoculars in his hand said it was a magnificent battle beyond comprehension. However, the knight was also wounded. Losing strength, he fell onto the road. The young man on the roof said that he thought it was time. The young man approached the knight, patted him on the shoulder, and asked how he was feeling. The young man thought again that everything was going as Cheongi-chol had predicted. He had said that the knight would gain the man's strength by trying to save him. The knight stirred, began to cough, and blood appeared from his mouth. The young man thought that this knight needed help. But what should he do? It would be worth asking about this in more detail. The knight opened his eyes slightly and asked the young man what year it was. The young man replied that it was August 2035. He said that he had spent 30 years there. Only 5 years had passed here. The knight sharply told the young man not to make any sudden movements. He should just lie still. Then he added that it was too late. The young man knew that unfortunately the knight would die today. The knight regretted that he had to use most of his strength to open the gate. Otherwise, everything would have been different. The knight took out a photograph, handed it to the young man, and said he had one request. He needed to find his family. If they were alive, they needed to be taken care of. The young man took the photograph and said that he was not in a position to take care of anyone. The knight said that he was not asking for free. He would give the young man his power. The young man looked surprised but was very happy about it. The knight said that in order to transfer his strength, he needed to know the young man's name. The young man replied that his name was Park Kang-ho and asked the knight's name. In this world ravaged by apocalyptic disasters, there had always been 2 common themes in the young man's life. The young man in armor smiled and said that he had finally met Cho Jung-hyuk. It was June 2058, and this was Jung-hyuk's hideout. The knight said that now Chung-hyuk would not be able to escape him. Chu Jung-hyuk was weakened, and his body was covered in bleeding wounds. Chu Jung-hyuk said that he felt he couldn't escape this time. He asked who had told him that he was here. The knight said he had received information about the 16th ranked villain, Chajin. He had to make a deal with him. The knight added that the villain had leaked his information for $1 million and received a promise that he would not be pursued for a year. Chu Jung-hyuk said that Chajin turned out to be a real scoundrel. The knight said that he had received answers to his questions, and now it was time for Chae Jun-hyuk to die for good. Chu Jung-hyuk thought about the death of his parents, the false accusations, the disaster, and then the death of his younger brother and sister. As soon as the unfamiliar words began to make sense, he found a way to reverse his life. Chu Jung-hyuk asked his opponent before they began if he knew what it was. An unusual stone lay in the guy's palm. Choi Jun-hyuk said it was an artifact that was rumored to exist. The rollback stone. The knight was frightened when he realized what was in Choi Jong-hyuk's palm and shouted for it to be destroyed immediately. However, it was too late. The rollback stone began to glow brightly. Cho Jong-hyuk said that they would meet in the past. Let it at least be a time when his younger brother and sister were still alive. After spending 23 years returning, the young man entered the world of the past. His name was Choi Chun-hyuk. It was the same world on the verge of collapse due to the gates and monster attacks, but life went on. This time, everything would be different. The young man extended his hand to the knight after giving his name. The system transfer was activated. The target was Choi Chun-hyuk. The system reported that performing the transfer would result in the destruction of the creator's physical body. The knight said that nothing would change for him because he was already dead anyway. The system reported that user Park Kang-ho had initiated the system transfer. A new user was registered, Choi Chun-hyuk. The creation of the second original system is in progress. The transfer of the master copy is beginning. The process of scanning the body of user Choi Chun-hyuk was underway. The young man thought that he must remain vigilant until the very end. Even though the transfer had already begun, if he wasn't careful, the process could be canceled. The knight said that life really was shit. Choi Chun-hyuk heard a roar behind him and turned around. Behind him stood a monster with a huge hole in its chest. The knight said that in fantasy novels, people return home and live happily ever after. He added that he would have to forget about transferring his power. The guy would have to run away right now before it was too late. Choi Chun-hyuk said that the process was not yet complete. The knight remarked that if life is shit, you have to live with that shit. You just have to adapt and survive. Choi Hyuk didn't want to run away. The boy grabbed a stick and said he knew exactly what he was doing. He was tired of running away. The knight said the young man had simply gone mad. Choi Chun-hyuk looked small next to the huge monster. However, the young man was not afraid of the beast. The monster turned around and walked away silently. Choi Chun-hyuk was surprised, but he didn't mind. The knight said that the young man was just lucky. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that it was thanks to the knight. The young man noted that if the monster had not been critically wounded, everything would have been different. The system continued the transfer process. Park Kang-ho's body began to transform. The knight used his last ounce of strength to tell the young man to remember his words. He must find his family and take care of them. If the boy broke his promise, there would be no forgiveness for him, even after death. The transfer process was complete. The system announced that the body was being restructured through awakening. The system warned the user to be prepared for the fact that the restructuring process could be painful. Choi Chun-hyuk immediately felt it. The awakening had begun. The young man felt as if all his bones were breaking and his flesh was falling apart. A small truck was driving along the deserted roads of the destroyed city. The driver was in a good mood and humming a song. The driver saw Choi Chun-hyuk and wondered why he was there. The truck stopped nearby. Choi Chun-hyuk looked back. Choi Chun-hyuk was surprised to see that Ki Chul-hyun had arrived. The driver asked if Choi Chun-hyuk wasn't off work today. The young man had asked to switch shifts yesterday, so he came today. Choi Hyuk said he was going to go back, but then a monster showed up, so he got stuck here. He missed his chance to leave and ended up staying here all night. Gi Chul-hyun was surprised to learn that the young man had spent the whole night here. This guy was definitely tired of living. Choi Hyuk said it was okay because he hit the jackpot thanks to that. Choi Hyuk asked why Hyun was here at this hour. It was too early to start the workday. Where were the rest of the team members? Gi Chul-hyun said that he had been waking up early lately, which is why he had come. The man added that the others would be arriving soon. Choi Chun-hyuk didn't believe him and decided that he was hiding something useful again. Park Gi-chul is the leader of the Gin team. He was the original owner of the Copy Master ability, which the young man stole today. The Copy Master ability is the ability to copy and use the abilities of other awakened ones. Gi Chul-hyun couldn't use it properly. Most likely it was because of this ability that he gradually became an outcast among other awakened ones, until he was found dead in an abandoned building. Ki Chul-hyun said goodbye to his colleague and wished him good luck. The reason for the collapse was simple. He revealed that his ability was copying when he registered as an awakened one. Who would tolerate their hard-earned skills being copied so easily? Ki Chul-hyun looked at the seat next to him. There were 3 B-class crystals and 4 C-class crystals lying there. The young man felt a little ashamed in front of Ki Chul-hyun for stealing these crystals, but it was because of them that he almost died. Now all that remained was to figure out how to use them properly. Even if he just sold them, he could comfortably walk away from the business. But he couldn't do that, so they were useless anyway. These were rare crystals. After awakening with Kang Ho's power, Ki Chul-hyun was so shocked that he didn't even get to the trophies. When he returned the next day to collect them, the trophies had already disappeared. Every time Ki Chul-hyun thought about that moment, he regretted not taking care of the trophies. Ki Chul-hyun was cautious and looked around beforehand. However, he had planned to take the loot from the very beginning. If they were the cores of ordinary monsters, he could try to sell them discreetly. However, if he put high-grade monster cores up for sale, then the Awakened Association and the government would start investigating where they came from. Or something even worse could happen. For example, someone would target him, and he would be destroyed somewhere in an abandoned building. To solve this problem, the young man had to register as an Awakened as soon as possible. Chu Chun-hyuk made a phone call. The person on the other end asked what could possibly bring such a busy man to call. The young man said that he had some money, so he decided to have a drink with his old friend Kang Chul-min. He suggested having a feast with smoked pork belly. The car entered the safe zone. Choi Chun-hyuk said that his friend had to do him a favor. Chu-hyuk asked how much he could offer this time. His friend replied that the items were very useful, so he was willing to pay 600 for everything. Chu-hyuk asked for a little more, because it was difficult to find anything worthwhile these days. The man agreed that previously he could have gotten 800 for such items, but now it was very difficult. The number of people looking for expensive goods had decreased sharply. The man said that the population was declining, prices were rising, and people were simply not spending money. Children appeared behind the young man. A boy and a girl with tears in their eyes ran up and called out to their little brother. They asked why he had only just returned. They had already thought he had abandoned them. They were Choe Eun-jong and Choe Eun-chol. Choi Chun-hyuk was surprised to see them there. The man said that children should not be scolded. They came here because they were worried that the young man had not returned all night. Money is good, but the young man should think about what would happen to these children if something happened to him. Choi Chun-hyuk told them to stop crying and asked them to explain what had happened. Chu Chun-hyuk suggested that the brother and sister go home and promised to fry some meat for their lunch. The children stopped crying and were delighted because they loved meat. The sister said that their grandmother upstairs had asked them to stop by when their brother returned. The grandmother reminded them that the rent was overdue. The grandmother, the children, and the young people met together for lunch. Grandmother asked why the young man had brought all this. Choi Chun-hyuk said that he had stopped by the butcher's shop, bought some meat, and thought of the landlady. The woman said that he should have thought of the children instead. The young man handed her the envelope with the money and apologized for the delay. It was the overdue rent. The grandmother said he didn't need to rush. The woman said she was going to talk about it anyway. She knows that the young man has been having a hard time lately, so she decided to take only half the amount now. Chu Chun-hyuk thanked her and added that there was no need for that. The young man said that in difficult times, everyone should help each other. So there was no need to be shy, he should just agree. The grandmother gave the young man a slap on the back of the head and told him not to boss her around. The young man was offended. He asked why the grandmother needed a spoon, to scoop rice or to crack skulls. He added that after the grandmother's death, the house would belong to him anyway. The grandmother said that Chang Su shouldn't have said that. Because of him, her stomach was in knots and she couldn't sleep at night. Grandma said that Chang Su wasn't studying, but running around doing what is called porters. The children were silent at this time. Chang Su said that this is what studying is all about. He is learning how hunters fight in case he suddenly becomes awakened. Chang Su wondered why Choi Chun-hyuk was finishing college then. Chang Su added that now is the time of the awaken, the age of hunters. Choi Chun-hyuk has no idea how this world works. The phone rang, and it was Kang Chul-min on the line. The man said he had discussed the matter, and the team captain had informed him that the young man should come see him. The caller added that if Choi Chun-hyuk did well, he could be added to the list of permanent team members, albeit in a secondary role. Chu-hyuk agreed. Kang Chul-min asked in surprise why he had suddenly changed his mind. After all, Chu-hyuk had never shown any interest in working as a porter before. The young man thought that he still had no interest in it. Everything was being done to save Kang Chul-min. The young man said that working at Goyang was becoming increasingly difficult, so he had started looking for other options. Kang Chul-min told Choi Chun-hyuk to come out tomorrow at around 8 in the morning and be sure to be at the 7th gate on the western wall. The young men said goodbye. Choi Chun-hyuk decided that everything was going according to plan. The next day arrived. Cho Chun-hyuk decided that today he would copy the tank skill and go straight to the association. Kang Chulman said that Choi Chun-hyuk had arrived early today. The young man decided to register as a tank and get basic equipment. Kang Chulman introduced the knight and said that this was the friend he had mentioned yesterday. The knight said that he was the captain of this team, a tank named Yu Sang-jin. Chu-hyuk said he was looking forward to working together today. The young men shook hands and the copy was created. The young man was asked to choose from 3 skills presented. The unique skill, Iron Skin. The unique skill, Shield Strike. The unique skill card. It releases a powerful aura that intimidates enemies and attracts their attention. Chu Chun-hyuk decided to copy Iron Skin, Shield Strike, and Suppression. The copying of skills was complete, and now they could be viewed in the skills menu. Choi Chun-hyuk realized that one handshake was enough time. He had finally copied the tank's skills. Yu Sang-jin said he liked this guy's grip. The team captain said that the young man could get into the truck. The other team members were already there. Yu Sang-jin said that before leaving for the hunting grounds, they should greet the team members. Choi Chun-hyuk understood that everyone gathered here was a first-rank awakened. The protagonist thought that as soon as he started copying the skills of higher-ranked awakened ones, the skills he had taken from these people would become useless. The car pulled onto the highway and moved in the specified direction. While the squad was on the road, the young man managed to copy 13 skills. 3 skills of healers were copied. 1 skill from a cartographer and 2 skills from a hunter. He also copied 7 attack skills. It was incredible, but now Choi Chun-hyuk could perform the roles of a tank, attacker, healer, cartographer, and hunter. The number of skills the young man could take was limited. Having skills from different roles is powerful, depending on how you combine them. The battle with the monster went well. At that moment, the monster's body was riddled with arrows. Yu Sang-jin shouted for So Ye-jin to finish off the monster. The girl replied that the order was accepted. Another arrow flew straight at the target. The monster was destroyed and fell to the ground. The job was done perfectly. Only 2 remained. Cho Chun-hyuk thought there was nothing else to do and decided to activate something for fun. However, after activation, he would not be able to change roles for a whole day. Immediately after this hunt, he was going to register as a hunter. There was no need to complicate things. The captain said that another day had passed without any incidents. All the team members did a great job. Yu Sang-jin noticed that today they had an unusually large amount of byproducts compared to other days. The young man with a huge backpack on his back said he couldn't bear such a heavy load. Kang Chulman told the team leader that this guy was quite famous for his fists back in school. Yu Sang-jin asked if he was referring to the time before the disaster. Kang Chulman replied that he had a knack for such things. Formerly, the young man didn't even train, and yet even athletes ended up at his feet. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised. Was he really a bully? Kang Chulman said that he shouldn't be called a bully because he himself beat up bullies. He had a dream of becoming a detective. If the world hadn't changed so much, he would be doing that now. The captain said it was a good job and handed him his fee. The young man replied that he would not take it, as he had said earlier. The captain told him to take it and not refuse, because if it weren't for him, their porter would have had a hard time today. The captain asked if the young man was going to continue being a porter. Cho Chun-hyuk replied that he would think about it. Yu Sang-jin suggested they meet again sometime if the opportunity arose. Kang Chulman asked his friend if they would have a barbecue today, as they had agreed earlier. Chu-hyuk apologized and said he already had plans for today. He would treat them another time. Seoul branch of the Awakened Association. Chu-hyuk approached the tank counter and said he had come to register as an awakened. The girl at the counter asked if he was sure that he had awakened as a tank. He answered in the affirmative. Chu Chung-hyuk stated that he had awakened as a tank only today. The girl looked at the young man with curiosity. Cho Chun-hyuk asked if something was wrong. The girl said that he was the first person she had seen who had awakened as a tank in the last 6 months. The girl congratulated the young man and asked if he had brought his ID card. Chu-hyuk took out his ID card and handed it to the girl. The girl suggested that he sit down and wait a moment. Chu Chun-hyuk sat down and thought that when he first opened his eyes after returning, he thought it was a dream. When he was in prison, his brother and sister came to visit him, and then he cried for a long time when he found out that they had died in a car accident. Their death was decisive in his desire to become a villain. However, when he returned and saw them alive, he felt a wave of joy. At first, he thought it was a dream. Chu Chun-hyuk decided that he would never lose his loved ones again and would protect them at all costs. According to reports, endurance ranges from a minimum of 6,000 to a maximum of 15,000. Strength is randomly assigned between 2 and 5,000. His stats were the maximum for a first awakening. Chu Hyuk wondered what the awakening of the core was. Gi Chul Hyun had not mentioned anything about it. Chu Hyuk thought that if it was forming, he would need to find out when it would be complete. The female administrator returned his ID and said that the identity check was complete. She advised him to follow the young man for testing. The young man said his name was Lim Ji-hoon. The protagonist greeted him and gave his name. The young people moved on. Lim Ji-hoon said that they had prepared everything in advance so they could start the test right away. The target was not awakened, so it was impossible to copy her. Chu Chun-hyuk believed that this man was also awakened since he worked for the association. However, it turned out that there were also unawakened staff members here. Lim Ji-hoon said that the test consisted of 3 stages. At the same time, the hero was lying on a couch with his torso exposed. Various sensors were connected to the young man's body. Lim Ji-hoon said that the first stage measured strength and endurance. The preparation was complete and the measurements began. Lim Ji-hoon said that it would take about 10 minutes so he could just relax. The second stage involved the use of an active unique skill, a shield strike. To do this, the test subject received a shield and approached a monster mannequin. Lim Ji-hoon warned that the level of aggression would be measured. The skill had to be used on the monster mannequin opposite. It didn't matter which part of the dummy was hit, so there was no need to hold back. The shield strike was activated. The next moment, the monster mannequin was punched in the ear. The final third stage of the assessment began. However, Lim Ji-hoon said that due to problems with selecting assessors, the third stage would take place in 2 days. The tests were completed for today. Now you can go to the counter, and the young man will be provided with basic equipment. Chu Chun-hyuk couldn't believe that the day had come when he would receive the long-awaited standard equipment of the association. Lim Ji-hoon noted that he was concerned about the decrease in the number of awakened tanks and healers. Compared to 5 years ago, during the Great Catastrophe, their numbers had fallen sharply. Even though the forcibly awakened, created with the help of awakening stones, were replenishing the ranks, most of them focused on the roles of attackers or support. Not to mention that awakening stones are not so easy to obtain, especially awakening stones for tanks and healers. They are incredibly rare. However, even with an awakening stone, there is no 100% guarantee that a person will awaken. Choi Chun-hyuk knew this well, as he was lucky enough to obtain this stone and awaken while he was being hunted as a criminal. After becoming a villain, the young man could no longer register as awakened. Lim Ji-hoon said he was very happy because he hadn't seen a tank in a long time. Lim Ji-hoon reminded him that the third stage of the evaluation was scheduled in 2 days. Choi Chun-hyuk must not forget and must come at the appointed time. Chu Chun-hyuk shook hands again and said he was looking forward to working together. Chu Chun-hyuk left the room with a suitcase in his hand, which contained the association's standard equipment. The young man had a sword on his back. The protagonist called Kang Chul-min and told him that on his way home, he suddenly woke up like a tank. This came as a complete surprise to the other person. Chu Hyuk said he was serious and that this was no joke. The young man entered a strange establishment, but thought he had come to the right place. Chu Hyuk approached the counter where the employees were standing, continuing his phone conversation. Kang Chul-min said that it was simply unbelievable. Chu Chun-hyuk looked up and saw a huge mantis claw. The claw model cost 3 million coins. Suddenly, for some reason, the phone call was interrupted. The conversation continued after the young man moved away from the claw. He said that he had gone to the association and registered as an awakened one. In 2 days, he would have a test for a third-ranked tank. Chu Chun-hyuk asked if he could join them as a porter again. Watching the veteran hunters during the hunt had probably helped him. Chu Chun-hyuk added that he had been too focused on carrying things to properly observe the commander's battle. Our hero saw a wooden ring. This artifact immediately caught his interest. Chu Chun-hyuk approached the employee and said he would like to purchase the bracelet and the solution. It was an artifact that once belonged to Jaden Russell, who was ranked 3rd among the villains. Chu Chun-hyuk remembered past events. Before traveling back in time, when he was ranked 8th among villains, he had once had a drink with Jaden. At that time, he heard the story of how Jaden acquired the bracelet and what its main functions were. Simply equipping it could increase the effectiveness of skills by 1/3. Chu Chun-hyuk wondered why the employee was looking at him like that. Was something wrong? The employee asked if the young man had registered as awakened today. Chu Hyuk replied in the affirmative, whereupon the employee immediately swung his fist to strike him. The man said he knew it because his ability was teleportation. Chu Chun-hyuk said that now he understood everything. However, our hero still did not fully understand what it was. A punch? For a second, he thought that the employees were attacking him. Nevertheless, our hero decided that a copy of this would suit him too. The ability to teleport is good. Another employee also held out his fist and said his name was Hwangman Su. He was awakened with the ability to manipulate space. Chu Chun-hyuk extended his fist forward and said that he was also pleased to meet him. The young man thought that spatial manipulation was just what he needed. The employee said he had overheard a recent conversation. If a visitor passes the tank test, does that mean he is one? The employee added that tanks were actually the nobility among the awakened. It was truly something to be envied. Chu-hyuk said with surprise that he did not expect to meet awakened ones here. Was this a side job for the employees? The young people replied that this was their main job. Choi Chun-hyuk thought this was surprising. The man said that, with so many awakened people with support-type skills, it had become difficult to find work. Besides, his ability was not very useful in battle. To earn a living, he became the owner of a shop selling antiques and accessories for awakened people. Chu-hyuk thought that it must be difficult for these two in the job market. Our hero was offered the solution he had ordered. The bracelet and the solution together cost 350,000 coins. A small discount could be applied. Chu Chun-hyuk expressed his gratitude for the opportunity. The young man considered that he had now gathered all the materials necessary for printing: the bracelet, the solution, the D-class crystals he had at home, and his blood as a binding agent for all of this. After the appropriate procedures, the Twilight bracelet was ready. The system reported that the artifact created by the owner of the original system had been printed. The Twilight bracelet was registered as an installed artifact in the system. Now you could see the options for the registered artifact. The Twilight bracelet was linked to the user of the second original system, Choi Chun-hyuk. Since it had been printed by the user of the original system, the item was completely unlocked. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised. What was this? An artifact created by the owner of the original system? Suddenly, his cell phone rang. It was Kang Chul-min on the line. The caller said that he had spoken with the team commander. Kang Chul-min added that no matter how much he explained, Yu Sang-jin replied that it all made no sense. He said he would only believe it if he saw it with his own eyes. Choi Chun-hyuk was delighted because he thought he would be refused. Kang Chul-min said they would meet tomorrow morning at the 7th gate. The protagonist activated spatial manipulation. Chu-hyuk stuck his hand into the subspace, searching for the necessary item. The young man told his interlocutor that he understood everything and took the suitcase out of subspace. The next day arrived and the whole team was already assembled. Choi Chun-hyuk greeted them. The squad was extremely surprised when they saw Choi Chun-hyuk in all his glory, in new uniform and with a shield in his hand. Yu Sung-jin said that now he believed that the young man had truly awakened as a tank. The captain added that Chulmin had outlined the situation to him in general terms, but he still refused to believe it. Could all this have happened in one day? The protagonist smiled and said that he suddenly awakened yesterday on his way home. Yu Sung-jin said that he had heard that the number of natural awakenings had fallen sharply recently. What happened to the young man was truly impressive. Chu Chun-hyuk noted that he had a third-rank tank test tomorrow, so he came to see how the captain commanded and attacked. It might help him on the test, so he bothered the team again. Yu Sung-ji expressed doubts that the young man would be able to learn anything. However, he said he would give just one piece of advice as someone who had started doing this earlier. Yu Sung-ji said that he carried this shield not because he had awakened as a tank, but because it was his conscious choice. When facing monsters, there are inevitably moments when a person is tired and exhausted. At such times, one thing must be remembered. It is not skills or stats that can bring you back into action, but confident determination. In a deserted square, the squad discovered a monster sleeping peacefully. The team captain peeked around the corner and asked if they had managed to identify the type of prey and its location. The answer was that one drone had been confirmed. Yu Song-ji said that in that case they would begin. The captain ordered Yang De-jin to check the monster's position again. The young man replied that he understood. The holographic map was activated and the monster's type was confirmed. It was a drone. Their attack power is low, their movements are slow, but their defense is high like that of E-class monsters. One of the team members expressed doubt. Would they have enough strength left? His colleague said that he already felt exhausted, even though they hadn't even started yet. How long would it take to break through these shields? The young man noted that at such a distance, if something happened to the other team, even the drones wouldn't be able to reach them. Yu Seongji acknowledged that this was a possibility. However, the prey was slow, and Hyun Seongnam's group was one of the most experienced teams of veterans on the field. As long as they did what they always did, there should be no problems. Healer said that since the drone's attack power was low, she, as a doctor, would have an easy day, although perhaps the attackers would have a hard time. The captain asked Ji Chul if all the traps were set. The answer was yes. The captain said that was good and ordered Chul Min and Dong Hyuk to follow him. Hee Sun and Jun Hyuk remained in place. Each member of the team understood their task, and part of the squad moved towards the monster. The protagonist felt that something was wrong here. Although the young man did not know all the details, the reason for the destruction of Chulmin's team before returning in time was the invasion of another monster. However, if the invading monster was a drone, Hun and his team would have been able to handle it. So how were they all destroyed? Something was definitely wrong here. The team captain asked if So Yunjin was ready. The girl gave an affirmative answer. The command to open fire was given, and the arrow flew toward its target. The arrow hit the drone, and the girl said she was moving on to the next point. Yu Seongji noted that everything was going as expected. The monster opened its eyes, got up, and moved toward the attackers. The captain shouted that the drone was attacking. The long-range fighters had to get ready. The young people replied that they understood the order and were on full alert. The monster rose on its hind legs and growled loudly, demonstrating its aggression. Fire was opened, and the archer kept his distance and continued shooting. He asked irritably how much longer they were going to poke him in the back, because he wanted to get it over with and go home. The monster was hit by arrows, but it remained on its feet and continued to growl. The archer said that the monster was very slow and would not be able to hit him, so he moved closer to the drone. However, the monster hit the young man, and he flew far back, crashing into the wall. The young man said that Don Hyuk had provoked this monster, so he was approaching it from behind. The attackers said that the monster had a shield that was too strong, and his attacks against it were useless. The monster was approaching the deactivated hunter. Something had to be done urgently. The commander shouted that they needed to use the shield and rushed at the monster. The monster received multiple blows from the tank and was knocked off its feet. There was a moment of respite. However, the monster got up on its hind legs and moved toward the team captain. Yu Sang-jin said that he had provoked the drone. Chulmin should prepare for long-range attacks and Dong Hyuk for close-range attacks. Everyone acted on his command. The next moment, the team captain activated the suppression skill. Yu Sang-jin told his teammates that he was holding the monster off. The team captain put his shield forward, fending off the drone's attack. Yejin took aim, and another arrow was fired at the monster. The shot hit its target, and the drone screamed loudly in pain. The team captain told Chulmin to organize a long-range attack. At the same time, the monster went into a defensive stance. The attackers on both sides approached the drone, preparing for a joint attack. Yu Sang-jin ordered everyone to continue with basic attacks until further notice. Kang Chulmin approached closely and said that just looking at the monster's back was exhausting. Healer yawned and said that if things continued like this, today's hunt would be over. It was a complete disappointment. Why did this always happen to them? The girl added that the drone was not one of those monsters that often appeared. If they were unlucky, such encounters could happen only a few times a year. Choo Chun-hyuk asked how many times they had destroyed such monsters. Healer replied that their group had encountered them 3 times in the last 5 months. The healer suggested that, judging by his questions, the young man was eager to learn new things. The girl handed the young man a device and said it might help him. Choi Chun-hyuk was surprised. Was it really the M7? Healer said that the official name of this measuring device was Jeremy M7. It was equipment for hunters. The girl added that the young man was here to watch them hunt. But just watching is not enough. Using this device to analyze stats could really help before the 3rd test. This drone's health pool was very large compared to other monsters, and its shield was completely discouraging. Choo Chun-hyuk agreed that it would take forever to break all of this. The archer said they had a new problem. Captain Yu Sang-jin asked what he meant. The young man replied that the life signals of 4 team members on the other side had disappeared from the map. Could Seongnam's group have been destroyed? He was surprised. Had their signals really disappeared? Suddenly, mantises appeared from a crack in the wall of the building. This was unexpected, and the team captain asked how long it would take for them to arrive. The shooter said that the mantises could appear in less than 2 minutes. Yu Sang-jin shouted for Choi Chun-hyuk and Hai-soo to leave immediately and wait somewhere safe. The protagonist realized where his feeling of unease came from. It turned out to be related to the mantises. The commander ordered Ye-jin to hold her position. Ji-cheol was to prepare binding traps. Chu-hyuk took Ye-jin by the hand and said they had to leave. The protagonist was surprised. Where was the commander going to retreat to? At such a distance, retreat was practically impossible. If the monster caught them, it would tear them to pieces. Yu Sang-jin repeated the order for his team members to retreat immediately. Choi Chun-hyuk said that retreat was not an option. The mantises were too fast. Besides, they still needed about half an hour to deal with the drone. Chu Chun-hyuk asked the commander what they would do if the mantis appeared right now. Tank added that the mantis would practically destroy them. The young man prepared for battle. There was almost no time left to make a decision. The mantis appeared within reach. Chu Chung-hyuk said that now all they could do was hold out as long as possible. The captain was surprised. Had Choi Chun-hyuk really gone mad? Did the young man really think that all awakened tanks were the same? Choi Chun-hyuk was just a rookie who hadn't even received his registration card as an awakened yet. Yu Sang-jin added that if a rookie who hadn't even gone through a virtual battle recklessly attacked a mantis, he wouldn't make it out alive. Chu Chun-hyuk said that he would still go to the battlefield as soon as he received his card. So what's the problem? The protagonist blocked the mantis attack and said that tanks had to take the hit anyway. The young man took advantage of the situation and struck the monster with his shield. The blow caused the mantis's eyes to pop out onto its forehead. Chu Chun-hyuk believed that it was necessary to learn as much as possible in advance to avoid mistakes in real battles. Kang Chul-min said that this was a real battle. The protagonist asked if there wasn't something else to worry about besides him right now. At that moment, the drone rose on its hind legs and became a threat again. Chu-hyuk pointed out that if Hyun Sung-jin couldn't keep the drone in this narrow passage, they would all be destroyed. The drone attacked the team captain. Yu Sang-jin managed to block the attack at the last moment. The captain said that Choi Chun-hyuk was right. It was necessary to immediately revise the battle tactics. Dong-hyuk had to buy some time, as he was a long-range attacker. The drone struck again. This time, the captain was deactivated and flew far back. Yu Sang-jin shouted for Kang Ji-chul to immediately use the binding trap. At that moment, the trap element flew to the drone's feet. The trap opened, and the monster's paws were caught in chains. The hunter said that the binding would last 5 minutes. The captain thought that the drone was in front of them and the mantis was behind them. In such a confined space, their only route of retreat was completely blocked. They barely managed to buy some time, but the situation was still hopeless. They were truly in a difficult, desperate situation. Chu Chun-hyuk approached the mantis and delivered a crushing blow with his shield to its vulnerable spot. However, the mantis remained standing. The young man said that it was impossible to knock down such a monster with a single blow. The archer continued shooting. The captain said that Ye-jin was doing an excellent job. The girl replied that she simply did not know how to do anything else. The mantis chose another target and began to climb the building toward the window behind which the archer was standing. The captain shouted for Ye-jin to immediately change her position and leave. The mantis shifted its focus. The girl saw the mantis's huge claw rapidly moving toward the window. There was no time to think. The mantis broke through the wall and smashed the window. Ye-jin was hit and flew far to the side. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that the provocation would not grow linearly and add up to the existing value. He realized that he had been too careless. The young man assumed that simply using the shield twice would be enough to keep the mantis focused on him. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that if he couldn't pull the monster away, it would rush straight at the archer. The suppression skill was activated. The protagonist used the twilight bracelet. The risk was high, but he had to try. The mantis stuck its head into the building and saw Ye-jin. The girl was injured. Our hero could only hope that the bracelet's stats would work. Mantis continued to approach the girl. Mantis continued to climb the building. Something had to be done urgently. Chu Chun-hyuk shouted again for Ye-jin to hurry up and leave immediately. The protagonist mentally influenced the mantis. The monster changed its target and began to descend to attack the young man. The guy thought that this time the provocation had worked. The team captain was surprised at how Choi Chun-hyuk was able to shift the mantis's focus to himself. Chu Chung-hyuk rushed at the monster, thinking it was too risky to continue the provocation with only basic attacks. The young man tried to avoid using his copied skills. However, now he had no choice. The skill Destructive Body was activated. Chu Chun-hyuk gave the command to equip the attacker's passive skill. At the same time, he jumped back, dodging the mantis's attack. The young man believed that his basic attacks were now comparable in damage to those of specialized attackers. The protagonist experienced a feeling familiar to him countless times before the rollback in time, as if every cell in his body was awakening. The archer fired an arrow at the mantis. The mantis put out its claw. The arrow missed its target and flew off to the side. Chu Chon-hyuk believed that it was this new feeling that had earned him 8th rank among the villains. It was called hyper-perception. The wounded Yejin took advantage of the opportunity, got to her feet, and prepared to shoot her bow. However, the arrow fell from her hands and hit the floor. The girl felt that she was losing too much blood, and because of this, she could not exert any strength. Healer began remote treatment. She told everyone to be quiet as their shouting was distracting her. Yejin asked why Hiso was doing this. There was no need for it. Considering the time it would take to treat her, it would be better to spend it on Junhyuk. Haisu said that there was no need to worry about Junghyuk. In any case, she would not be able to treat him if he did not lose his health. Healer added that this guy was crazy because he took all the damage as if he were the leader of their team. In a way, this young man was even amazing. Choe Chun-hyuk continued to attack the mantis. The attacks on the drone continued. However, Choi Chun-hyuk realized that his shield would not last long at this rate. Yu Sung-jin said that there was no point in wasting time on basic attacks. They just needed to bombard the monster with skills. They had to finish the fight before the trap stopped working. The captain said that he would keep the monster's attention on himself at all costs, so everyone should just do as they were told. Finally, Yu Sung-jin waited for the right moment. The drone stood on its hind legs and roared loudly. The shield strike was activated. The binding trap was supposed to disappear in 10 seconds. Choi Min took out his blade and approached the drone. The captain shouted that it was time to act. Kang Shulman activated the critical strike skill and unleashed all his power on the monster. The attack worked, and the drone began to lose strength, swaying on its weakened hind legs. Yu Sang-jin said it was the final blow. The job was done. Chulman said he had obtained the monster's core and a skill card. It was a real jackpot. Yu Sung-jin said that now was not the time to relax. Now it was time to go help Jun-hyuk. Meanwhile, Cho Chun-hyuk continued to strike the mantis with his shield. The monster's wounds began to bleed, releasing a green liquid. Chu-hyuk told his colleagues that if they were done with their hunt, it would be a good idea to pull this monster over to them. Choi Min noted that this tank was really out of his mind. He did everything himself, and now he was offering to take the monster for himself. It didn't seem like Choi Chun-hyuk had any problems. Why not take it as practical experience and finish off the monster himself? Kang Chul-min added that he had no objections to this and asked what the others would say. Yejin replied that she had objections. She was not the type of person who could live with a debt. The girl took aim again and fired an arrow at the mantis. Chu-hyuk jumped high, swung his shield, and prepared to strike. The blow hit the mantis right between the eyes, and green liquid splattered everywhere. The captain asked Chulman if his friend had really awakened as a tank. After the hunt was over, the team captain said they needed to hurry up and prepare to leave for their deployment location. Yu Sung-jin understood that everyone was tired and exhausted, but now they still had to move quickly. If they were late, even more monsters might appear. Kang Chulman asked his friend if he had used that thing. Choi Chun-hyuk asked what thing he was talking about. Chulman explained that he meant hyper-perception. Choi Chun-hyuk used it every time he was in a tough fight in high school. Otherwise, the move that Choi Chun-hyuk showed would not make any sense. Choi Min asked how his friend was feeling. After all, using that ability used to give him a headache that lasted all day. Chu-hyuk replied that he felt fine. Perhaps it was because of the awakening. Chulman said he was jealous. Some people are successful no matter what they do. Choi Min added that today his friend was treating him to drinks and refusals would not be accepted. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that it would be next time. Today he had to spend time with his younger brother and sister. Yu Sung-jin asked the protagonist who he really was. Did the guy really just wake up yesterday? How could someone who was a complete novice at awakening fight like that? Chu Chun-hyuk replied that the situation was a stalemate. He acted unconsciously and probably unleashed some superhuman power. It was surprising even to him. Yu Sang-jin frankly admitted that he didn't believe it. The commander got everyone's attention and said he had something to share. Today, Choi Chun-hyuk single-handedly destroyed the mantis, but he hasn't been officially registered as awakened yet. Although circumstances left no other choice, they could still face the consequences of the battle before registration. Chu Chung-hyuk thought that he had almost become a villain again. The commander suggested that the squad keep everything that happened today a secret. Everyone agreed. Yu Sung-jin turned away and, without looking the young man in the eye, thanked him for his help. After all, if it weren't for him, they could all have died today. The captain said that in light of this, he had decided to include Cho Chun-hyuk in the distribution of profits. Cho Chun-hyuk was surprised because that meant the others would have to take a smaller share. Healer said that no one would complain. Choi Chun-hyuk noted that if anyone had anything to say about it, he was ready to listen. The doctor smiled and said that in that case, she would stop treating them. The phone rang. The young man apologized and said he had to answer it. He assumed it was his younger brother and sister calling, but the call was from the association. The test was postponed again. A laboratory employee reported that the hunters sent to Thailand were returning today. Chu Chun-hyuk asked how their return was related to his test. The employee explained that a week ago, C-class monsters had appeared in Bangkok. Top hunters from Korea, Japan, China, Vietnam, and the Philippines had been sent there. In terms of hunter strength, Korea ranks third in Asia after China and Japan. However, Korea contributed more to this mission than Japan, and that is all the media is talking about. Therefore, the association is focusing on this. Choi Chun-hyuk said that now he understands everything. The young man assumed that now they just want to get rid of him as soon as possible. It was decided to conduct a test in the form of a virtual battle. The suit and shield are special testing equipment. Chu-hyuk thought it resembled the simulation room he had been in before the rollback. The employee said that the monster Choi Chun-hyuk would face was an F-class Cirrus. The test would last 1 hour. The longer the young man lasted, the higher his score would be. He had to give it his all. Suddenly, someone behind him said that the preparations were complete. The employee looked back. Chu Chung-hyuk asked the judges if they could begin. A silent affirmative answer was received. The protagonist was told that the test was beginning. A virtual monster attacked the hero. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that the top hunters had come here. Our hero thought that if he could use this opportunity to copy someone, regardless of their class, the result might exceed expectations. The monster rushed at his opponent. Choi Chun-hyuk decided that he needed to pass the test first. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that the heightened senses of such a large creature as Cirrus were impressive. The average hunting time for such a monster is 4 hours. If the results of the third stage of testing turn out to be better than those of the second, it will only reinforce the association's suspicions. However, with textbook movements, the judges would not suspect anything as long as he filled the time without trying too hard, but also without slowing down. After a while, the lab worker noticed that the same movements had been performed for 3 hours. The guy thought that Choi Chun-hyuk was incredibly confident. He would be lucky if he just didn't fail the test. Was it worth continuing to watch? The judges were extremely surprised by what they saw now. Could they really be witnessing the birth of a super rookie after all this time? When the monster opens up, the young man immediately attacks, and when the time comes, he instantly retreats. The most surprising thing is that this guy deflects attacks with minimal movements throughout the entire 3 hours. One of the judges apologized and said she urgently needed to go to the ladies' room to fix her makeup. However, she would be back soon. The jury chairman noted that he seemed to have overeaten at breakfast and also needed to leave briefly for the appropriate room. The third judge thought that this participant was very nimble, just like a little rat. He added that it was pointless to continue the test. The third judge took out her phone and said that she also needed to step away for a moment. The judge, bypassing the ladies' room, took out her phone and contacted the necessary people. She said that the conversation was about the tank that had been recorded in today's test. It was about its maximum potential. The chairman of the commission told his interlocutor on the phone that this tank was simply amazing. Everyone knows that textbook movements are the most difficult. This young man is the textbook itself. Other guilds may also take appropriate measures. If they don't do anything first, we need to do everything possible to prevent the others from taking any action. Our hero's actions during the third test greatly surprised all 3 judges. The female administrator handed the young man his ID card and said that his registration as an awakened one was complete. The job was done perfectly. Getting a C class on your first awakening is really impressive. Choi Chun-hyuk was surprised. Why C class? Was something wrong? The girl explained that getting a C class on the first awakening was very rare. Chu-hyuk wondered why he had received a C class again. After all, he hadn't done anything special, just tried to fight while conserving as much energy as possible. Chu-hyuk sighed and said that in any case, the registration was over. Now all that remained was to do legitimate business and live a happy life with his brother and sister. Chu Hyuk left the building and saw a large number of people who wanted to get closer to the members of the hunter team. The police blocked the way for these people. Several hunters who had been on a mission in Thailand did indeed come out of the building. They waved their hands in greeting to the people. Among these hunters was the sorceress Kang Ji-eun, who ranked second in the national attackers ranking. Also present was Kim Yoon-ho, who ranked first in the national attacker rankings. Lee Dae-soo ranked first in the national tank rankings. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised. Why did Lee Dae-soo look so unhappy? The protagonist knew that this guy was famous for his bad temper. The young man wondered, would he get into trouble if he talked to Lee Dae-soo? Chu Chun-hyuk decided to give it a try anyway and approached the celebrities. The young man bowed and greeted the young people, saying that he was their avid fan. This meeting was a great honor for him. Kang Ji-young fixed her hair and said she was pleased to meet him. The young man wondered if she wanted him to ask for an autograph. Chu Hyuk replied that it wasn't about that. He was actually a fan of Lee Dae-soo. Tank number 1 was surprised and gave the young man a menacing look. Chu Hyuk broke out in a sweat and thought he had really done something wrong. Lee Dae-soo looked at our hero. The young man was surprised. What kind of look was that? Anyone would have taken Lee Dae-soo for a villain. Was he really going to hit him? Lee Dae-soo asked menacingly what the guy had just said and if he could repeat it. Chu Chun-hyuk repeated fearfully that he was his fan. Lee Dae-soo smiled and asked his companions if they had heard that. Kim Yoon-ho smiled too. Kang Ji-young said that it would have worked out if only the monkey hadn't appeared. Lee Dae-soo noted that he did have fans after all. Half an hour earlier, a similar conversation took place in the limousine. Kang Ji-young recalled that after someone approached the tank claiming to be his fan, he threw him out because the fan was annoying. The girl added that she had not seen anyone else who called themselves a fan of Lee Dae-soo. Kang Ji-yoon added that she would not see any more fans of the tank. Besides, she did not like men who lied. Lee Dae-soo asked in surprise if she really didn't know who he was. After all, he was the #1 tank in the whole country. Did she really think he didn't have a single fan? The girl said that if even one person came forward as a fan of Lee Dae-soo before they reached the association, she would agree to have dinner with him, as Lee Dae-soo wanted. Kang Ji-yoon added that if that didn't happen, the tank would have to help her. The girl explained that they were planning to hunt a C-class monster in Genesis. Their guild had strong attackers, but they lacked tanks. If Lee Dae-soo loses the bet, he will have to be the main tank in the guild for a while. He will have to do it for free. Lee Dae-soo asked our hero several times if he was really his fan. Choi Chun-hyuk was frightened and even thought about running away. However, Lee Dae-soo held out his hand and said that he would like to give his fan an autograph, but he didn't have a pen, so they could just shake hands. Chu Hyuk didn't understand what was going on, but he gladly shook his hand. The copy was created. Lee Dae-soo asked the young man his name. Cho Chun-hyuk introduced himself. Lee Dae-soo handed our hero his business card and told him to contact him if he needed help. Cho Chun-hyuk, of course, thanked him. Kim Young-ho also shook hands with the frightened young man. Another copy had been created. Cho Chun-hyuk said he would never have believed he would see a national treasure in such a place. Lee Dae-soo was surprised. Was Yoon-ho really calling his fan a national treasure? The hunter replied that it couldn't be called a lie. Kim Yoon-ho noted that the conversation had gone on too long and that the president of the association was probably waiting for them. Cho Chun-hyuk held out his hand to the girl and said that he was also her fan. The guy asked to just shake her hand because it would be a great honor for him. The girl turned around and walked away silently. Choi Chun-hyuk was upset because she had previously said she could give him an autograph. Cho Chun-hyuk thought that with the skills he had just copied, it wasn't even a jackpot. It was a super mega jackpot. At the same time, somewhere in New York, work was in full swing at the American Association of the Awakened. A man asked his colleague what he was looking at. On the monitor screen was Choi Chun-hyuk's tank test. Was this even possible? After 3 hours, he had only used up 3% of his life force. The man asked what country this guy was from. His colleague replied that he was from Korea. But why do they need this? These people don't even know they're being watched. Why all this manipulation? The man said it was too early to report this to the bosses. They needed to study this guy a little more. Did Kevin know how many S-rank awakened ones there were in the world at the moment? Kevin replied that there are only 5 such awakened ones, and they all started as C ranks. Because of this, everyone is watching those who are C rank when they first awaken. If you miss the moment, you could lose a future S rank. Kevin contacted the director and reported that he had checked a tank from Korea registered as C rank. Kevin added that they needed to confirm something, but the result was simply incredible. The director had to see it for himself. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that the passives increased to level 3, significantly increased defense and reduced damage taken. As expected, the added stats increased evasion, health, and reduced elemental damage. Moreover, skills such as shield stun and stun overlay deal quite decent damage. Lee Su continued to play the role of a tank, attacking the monster. Shield stun can be a good trump card in critical moments. It is a versatile skill that strikes the opponent with a shield to stun them. When the skill is activated, it causes a 5-second stun. Lee Su shouted that it was time for Kim Young-ho to take action. The knight heard the command and sprang into action. His unique skills do not have any stats that increase attack power, but thanks to his universal skill, everything happens differently. The flash skill is a real jackpot in this case. After teleportation, the first attack deals 100% critical damage. The attack was successful, and the monster received an injury incompatible with its continued existence. The unique skill accelerated movement to confuse the enemy. Teleportation is possible to any desired location within a radius of 100 meters. The first attack after activating the skill guarantees critical damage. Choi Chun-hyuk, analyzing the skills he had acquired, believed that this was truly a super mega jackpot. He thought that if he combined the skills copied from Lee Su and Kim Young-ho with the power booster and weapon enhancement, he might be able to fight even mid-level monsters in the beginner zone. Chu Chun-hyuk returned home and went into the kitchen. The young man saw that the food had not been touched. His sister followed him into the kitchen. Choi Chun-hyuk asked why the children hadn't eaten, since he had bought dinner. Yoonjong asked why her brother had come home so late. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that he had been busy. Yoonjong said she hadn't eaten anything because she wanted to have dinner with her older brother. Chu Hyuk reminded her that he had warned them not to wait for him. His sister said she remembered, but decided to eat a little anyway. Yoonjong burst into tears and confessed that she had dreamed that her brother might die and that he had not answered her calls. The girl said she couldn't get in touch with her brother and was very scared. Chu Hyuk reassured his sister, saying that he was not going to die. Her younger brother Chol entered the kitchen and was also delighted to see his older brother. Chol said that he and his sister had been waiting for Choi Chun-hyuk. The young man thought he should be more attentive. Chul suggested that they all eat chicken together. Choi Chun-hyuk promised himself that he would take care of his younger siblings after his return. But before, he had been unable to do so because he was too busy. Chu Hyuk decided to pull himself together because that was why he had returned. After a hearty dinner, his younger brother and sister quickly fell asleep. Left alone, the young man decided to take some photos. After the photos were taken, he decided to register the product and wait for a buyer to appear. Chiron's Blessing and Mountain Split were too valuable to just sell. The young man was unable to acquire the skill because the user's class did not match the skill type, so it could not be acquired. Copying also failed. Chu Chun-hyuk thought he had no other options left. The creation of a personal core for the user of the original system was complete. Chu Hyuk grabbed his head. Unbearable pain appeared. The functional core system was generated. The young man did not understand what creating a core meant. He had never heard of such a thing from Gi Chil-hun. He had to wait for the process to complete. Chu Hyuk looked at his hands, and his body was suddenly filled with strength. It was similar to the feeling he had when he first awakened. This still needed to be figured out. A small truck with a new one rushes through the deserted streets of the ruined city. The young man activated the information display. The system asked him to enter keywords. The key phrase was original system. It was divided into two parts, the master system and the copy master system. The master system serves as the basis for derivative systems, which are widespread across all dimensions. It exists as a single entity, which sets it apart from awakening-type systems. In contrast, the second system requires a user to function and belongs to the awakening-type system. The Master of Copies can copy all abilities obtained from the force of creation. It is also capable of combining copied skills and creating new ones. The system copies targets, including all life forms affected by derivative systems. No matter how many times the young man heard this, it was still difficult to understand. What does life forms mean? Does that mean he can copy not only awakened beings, but also monsters? Chu Chun-hyuk climbed onto the roof of the building and decided that he was finally in the right place. The young man realized that the information search function would be extremely useful in the future. He unlocked it just by generating the core. Chu Chun-hyuk looked at the status window and saw that tectonic changes were also recorded there. Characteristics that had not been there before had been added. A huge increase in stats was recorded. Next, information about the characteristics of the core appeared. If the recharge points meant what he thought they meant, then they determined the additional power that could be used after the main power was exhausted. Together with the bracelet, this could lead to incredible effectiveness. And all these characteristics were only first level. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that with leveling up, they would most likely increase. Plus, there was always the chance that new characteristics would appear. To test his assumptions, he walked to the edge of the roof and looked down. The young man saw a huge monster moving along the roadway. Chu Hyuk immediately activated the virtual map of the area. As expected, there was not a single living soul nearby. It was the perfect place for a test. He climbed down and approached the huge monster. The young man activated his weapon's enhancement. The monster noticed the man, crouched down and quickly ran towards him. Chu Chun-hyuk did not lose his composure and summoned a long magic bow. Now the young man began to understand why Park Kang-ho was so strong. Chu Chun-hyuk prepared to repel the attack and held the bow in front of him. The arrow fired from the bow hit the monster right in the eye. The monster waved its arms and screamed loudly in pain. Chu Chun-hyuk thought it was a quick fire that preceded a critical shot. Not only the core, but everything else had grown to its maximum. The archery continued, and the monster continued to be injured. Chu Chun-hyuk decided to change his battle tactics and approach the monster at close range. The protagonist switched to a longsword. Now he was ready for hand-to-hand combat. The young man thought that he had completely inherited Park Kang-ho's abilities. It should be assumed that Choi Chun-hyuk had become as strong as that guy. Our hero decided to use his fists to test all his skills. After a while, the huge monster lay on the ground, showing no signs of life. Choi Chun-hyuk looked at the timer. 1 hour and 20 minutes. The young man thought that this was too slow, considering that other monsters were roaming nearby. It was necessary to reduce the time to half an hour. The phone rang. It was the Association of the Awakened. Cho Chun-hyuk wondered why they were calling at such an hour. It was Kim Joo-hee from the reception desk. The girl said she called in case the young man was awake. Was it convenient for him to talk? Choi Chun-hyuk asked what had happened. Kim Joo-hee replied that they had received an unexpected message from the secretary's office. Choo-hyuk looked back and saw that the monster behind him had risen to its full height. The girl added that the president of the association wanted to meet with the young man in person. Kim Joo-hee asked if it would be convenient to hold the meeting today. Choo-hyuk said he would like to know the president's working hours to avoid any conflicts. The girl said that the president always starts work at 7 in the morning, and that was when the meeting was scheduled. Kim Joo-hee noted that it was already 6:20 a.m. The monster continued to approach the man. Choo-hyuk Choi said he would be there in half an hour and prepared to counterattack. He activated his stun skill, and the monster was disoriented. Choi Chun-hyuk moved quickly and climbed onto the monster's back. Leaning his hand against the monster's body, the system asked if he wanted to copy the skill of a low-class soldier of the Barger's race. Chu Chun-hyuk answered affirmatively and jumped off the monster onto the ground. The copying was complete. The young man put his hand into his subspace. A C-class core was found. The system asked if the player wanted to absorb the core to increase the level of his own core. The protagonist answered affirmatively. The process of absorbing the C-class core began, and structural changes began to occur. Cho Chun-hyuk thought about how much time he could save by raising his core level. The system reported that the core level had been raised. The monster was in close proximity. Using a spatial portal, Choi Chun-hyuk quickly changed his location. Choo-hyuk thought that at this rate, he would be able to significantly reduce the time until his second awakening. Choo-hyuk decided he had overdone it. His stomach was cramping. The young man felt very hungry. Our hero found himself in an elevator with the girl who was supposed to accompany him. The young man decided to check the details of the skill he had copied from Xerus. Information appeared that low-class members of the same race would recognize him as one of their own. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that this class of monsters would not attack him. Just great, he thought. I need to activate this skill every time I have to fight monsters alone. The girl opened the door and invited the young man into the boss's office. The president of the association was delighted to see the guest and said he was pleased to meet him. The head announced that he would address the young man informally. Choi Chun-hyuk didn't mind, did he? Choo-hyuk replied that it was fine, and thought that the president was already addressing him that way. The president of the association said he was surprised to hear about the young man's early visit. Is he really such a diligent young man? He thought. Choi Chun-hyuk explained that he always wakes up early because he has to make breakfast for his brother and sister. The young man added that he had to take them to the department store so they could buy clothes. The president laughed and said that the young man was more interesting than he had expected. Young people today have a sense of humor that I don't always understand. The head noted that he wanted to get straight down to business. The association had a proposal for the awakened Choi Chun-hyuk. The president asked if the young man could reject offers from foreign guilds and stay in Korea. Choi Chun-hyuk was genuinely surprised and said he didn't understand what they were talking about. He hadn't received any offers from foreign guilds. The man explained that according to their sources, several major guilds in the US were interested in recruiting the young man. The president admitted that their test data had been hacked. There are suspicions that other guilds became interested in the young man after the test footage was leaked. Chu Chung-hyuk said that there was probably some misunderstanding. Do they even know my class? The president said that they were aware of this information. Choi Chun-hyuk was surprised. Are even the largest guilds in the US taking action? Is the C class really that impressive, he thought? However, he was only a person who had awakened once. The president asked if the young man knew the class of most people who had awakened a second time. They all had C class. Chu Chun-hyuk can be ranked alongside most of those who have undergone a second awakening. Now the young man could imagine that he would be able to increase his characteristics to the maximum in his second awakening. Then he would be able to reach the A class. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that the second awakening alone would make him capable of matching those who had awakened for the third time. And there was even a possibility of reaching S class. Based on his tank abilities, the association believed that even without reaching S class, the young man was already highly valued. They can't afford to lose a bird of such flight, thought Choi Chun-hyuk. The secretary handed the young man the documents. The president said that this was their offer. First, an initial payment of $1 billion in tax exemption for his team. And finally, 2 pieces of A-class equipment would be provided free of charge. Choi Chun-hyuk thought this was a very good offer for someone with an S-class rating. The association president said that the contract would be valid until the young man's second awakening. The man added that the deal was very profitable and that he should just sign the contract. Chu Chun-hyuk said that he had listened carefully to the offer, but he did not quite understand. Was all this support just so that he would stay in the country, or were there other conditions? The president said that the association did indeed have other conditions. The young man could not take the citizenship of another country during the term of the contract. He also cannot join guilds. For missions abroad, he must consult with the association. In addition, if the association requests a raid, the young man is obliged to take care of it first. Chu Chun-hyuk concluded that no one could come between him and the association. The president noted that if the young man joined a guild, the guild would have the final say in any requests. Consequently, their goals would take priority over his. That is why such conditions were set. Chu Chun-hyuk asked if there were any other binding conditions. The man said there were none, but there was no time to think about it. This offer would remain valid until the young man contacted the Americans. Cho Chun-hyuk replied that he understood. The young man said there was no point in delaying and signed the contract. Chu Chun-hyuk added that he did not need additional time to think it over. He had already made his decision. The president of the association shook the young man's hand and said he liked his decisiveness. Chu Chun-hyuk left the association building and went out into the city. He needed to spend time with his brother and sister. Chu Chun-hyuk took his brother and sister to a large shopping center. The children were delighted. Chul asked his older brother if he could look around the store. His sister said that if Yun-chul made noise, he would be scolded. Choi Chun-hyuk said that his brother could not only look around, but also choose whatever he liked. Yun-chul was delighted. Can I really choose anything I want? Yun-chul asked. Can I choose 2 things? Chu-hyuk said they could choose whatever they wanted. The children were delighted and said they would choose many gifts for themselves. Chu-hyuk thought that things had been turning out unexpectedly lately. He was worried about the difficulties that would arise once the probationary period for new employees ended. Yun-jung asked her brother what he thought of this dress. Yun-chul said that the dress suited her very well and that they should buy it. Cho Chun-hyuk thought that joining the association was not a burden. The only mandatory points were a ban on moving to other countries and joining guilds. Everything else was just recommendations, so it was not a bad offer at all. The saleswoman told the girls that they couldn't just touch the clothes in the window. Chu Hyuk thought that he also had a whole list of tasks that he had to complete. He had made this list when he was organizing his memories of his past life. The young man told the saleswoman not to worry. He would pay for everything the children wanted to buy. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that until he completed everything on that list, he had no reason to leave this country. A loudspeaker announced that a sudden gate had appeared near the department store. Chu Hyuk looked at his brother and sister. Visitors were asked to remain calm and follow the staff's instructions. A department store employee told everyone to remain calm. The hunters from Tibet will arrive soon, so you must stay inside until further instructions. The visitors were surprised. Shouldn't they evacuate immediately? The employee added that it was much more dangerous to go outside now. She said she would take everyone to a safe area, so they should follow her. One of the visitors started pushing everyone and shouting that he would go first. Chu Hyuk turned to the saleswoman and asked her to take his brother and sister to the shelter. The young man added that he was an active hunter, so he would go outside to check the situation. Yunjong was scared. Did her brother really need to go outside? After all, they said it was dangerous out there. Choi Chun-hyuk thought that the real danger was the department store. If he remembered correctly, there were 5 D-class monsters nearby. That day, the monsters had chased the people hiding in the department store. As a result, the buildings had collapsed. At the time, he had no reason to be in the department store, so he treated it as someone else's story. Who would have thought that it would happen today? Chu Hyuk told Yunjong to take care of her brother. He knew there was no time to waste. However, there was no guarantee that he would be able to get out safely with his brother and sister. Yuncheol said he wanted to go with his older brother. The young man understood that the Tebak Guild would not arrive until the buildings were completely destroyed. Therefore, our hero had only one option. He had to hold out until the guild arrived. The department store visitors were in a panic. They shouted that they needed to get out of there quickly because everyone could see the monsters approaching. A police officer suggested that everyone take shelter in the department store, as it should be a safe refuge. Chu Chun-hyuk was determined and headed in the opposite direction from where the townspeople were running. The young man was approaching the monsters. The moment came when there was no one between our hero and the monsters. The townspeople remained behind him. Chu Chun-hyuk activated the opening of the subspace and switched most of his skills to tank ones. The young man reached into the subspace to retrieve the necessary items. Chu Hyuk took out a shield. He thought that if even one monster broke through, his brother and sister would be in danger. He had to hold off all 5 monsters. Chu Chun-hyuk activated the universal skill Acceleration. This skill helps to deceive opponents with accelerated movements and confuses them. The young man ran past all the monsters at an accelerated pace and ended up behind them. Then Cho Chun-hyuk stopped abruptly and turned around. The monsters stopped and turned their attention to him. Chu Chun-hyuk waved his hand and told the slow-witted giants to come to him. The D-class monsters turned around and rushed at the hunter in unison. Lee Dae-soo rushed to the department store to help. He was very angry. Why couldn't they get out of the traffic jam? The driver replied that the roads were blocked by cars belonging to those trying to escape. The police were working to clear the road, but it would take time. Lee Dae-soo said furiously that every second counted now. The driver told him to calm down and look at his smartphone screen. The smartphone showed events being broadcast in real time. Some man was fighting monsters. Someone was fighting 5 D-class monsters while being just a tank. The driver said that this guy was fighting 5 monsters at once. Who is he anyway? Lee Dae-soo recognized the young man. He's my fan, he said. The driver asked who he was. Lee Dae-soo proudly said that this guy was his fan. He recalled that when he returned from Thailand, he ran into a fan at the association building. What was this guy's name? The cameraman said he was risking his life filming this content. He added that if this tank died, he would also have a hard time. The young man added that he was risking his life to keep his subscribers informed about this tense situation. He went live while on the front lines. Lee Dae-soo got out of the car. The driver asked where he was going. Lee Dae-soo said he had to save people. Other members of the team said they couldn't just sit around either. Lee Dae-soo was joined by other hunters who wanted to fight the monsters. Lee Dae-soo said that Cho Hwan would stay behind and gather any information about the newcomer. Cho Hwan replied that he didn't even know his name. Tank said that the guy's name was Cho Chun-hyuk. He remembered. Lee Dae-soo turned around and asked the hunters, "Is everyone ready?" All the hunters responded in unison that they were ready. Tank shouted for everyone to follow him, being careful. Chu Chung-hyuk continued to fight the monsters alone, dodging their attacks and counterattacking at the same time. He thought that if someone else took on at least one monster, it would be much easier for him. At the same time, the young man understood that no one would want to fight such monsters. Chu Chun-hyuk moved quickly across the square, trying to avoid the monster's attacks. The young man understood that there were no other crazy people like him among the townspeople. At one point, he found himself alone against two huge monsters. The monster was faster than he could have imagined, and its huge paw was already hanging over the young man's head. Suddenly, Lee Dae-soo appeared nearby. He told his teammates that he was already there. Lee Dae-soo activated the stun overlay skill, and the monster became disoriented. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised to see his idol, Lee Dae-soo, in front of him. The tank wasted no time in giving orders to his colleagues. Lee Dae-soo told Jo-hwan to check on the remaining survivors nearby and prepare for any unforeseen situations. Tank ordered Do-il to come to him and heal Choi Chun-hyuk. "We have to stay with this guy until the hunt is over." Chu-hyuk wondered why they had arrived so late. He could barely stand on his feet. Lee Dae-soo acknowledged that the guy looked exhausted, but he had continued to fight all this time. Lee Dae-soo smiled and added that the young man would surely be able to handle two more monsters. Tank added that as soon as the boy was healed, he could join his team. The healer told the young man not to move, as he would heal him now. Lee Dae-soo raised his shield and handed it to Cho Chun-hyuk. Tank added that it would be better if the young man joined the battle and finished the hunt as quickly as possible. Lee Dae-soo added that the longer it dragged on, the more damage there would be. Choi Chun-hyuk, of course, understood this. Tank looked at the destroyed monster and said that now they had less work to do. Chu Chun-hyuk noted that it would be easier for him to fight now that help had arrived. One of the monsters gathered speed and rushed at the hunters. At that moment, ordinary townspeople were hiding in a shelter in the department store building. The young people watched the broadcast and saw that the hunters from the guild had been fighting for about 3 hours. However, none of the skeletons had been defeated yet. The hunters were truly fighting desperately, but the situation looked alarming. Eun-jung listened anxiously and said she was scared. Yoon-chil told his sister not to worry. They just needed to wait a little longer, and their older brother would defeat these monsters. Eun-jung asked if her older brother would be okay. Chol replied that nothing would happen to him because Choi Chun-hyuk was a tank. Breaking news came in. Finally, one of the monsters had been destroyed. People rejoiced and shouted that they had done it. It was the moment when the efforts of the hunters, who were risking their lives, paid off. Chul told his sister that he also wanted to see what was happening. The saleswoman said that it was very dangerous to wander around like that. Chul replied that he would take a quick look and come back. A message came in that another Karakin had been destroyed. Now there were only 3 monsters left. Messages of support came in from viewers watching the broadcast from all over the world. As expected from the Tibet Guild, the best guild in the country, now all the people are saved. However, who is that tank? He wasn't seen in the guild before. This person held off 5 monsters for an entire hour all by himself. It was incredible. The children said he was their older brother. The hunters continued to fight the remaining monsters, and it wasn't easy. The monsters that could still fight were the strongest. However, the hunter used his skills, attacking with his shield and cut off the monster's head. The hunt lasted 7 hours. The young man said with relief, "Finally, it's over." Chu Chun-hyuk was also able to catch his breath and thought that now he would rest and recover. Lee Dae-soo approached the hero and said it was a job well done. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that he was very tired and wanted to sleep. Lee Dae-soo said that at first he had doubts, but it really was him. Chu-hyuk asked what he was talking about. Tank explained that the young man was the one who had awakened for the first time and received the highest S-class rating by unanimous decision of the judges. Lee Dae-soo said that this guy was unusual. Cho Chun-hyuk asked what that meant. Our hero was called out. He turned around and saw his younger brother and sister. They were accompanied by a saleswoman from the department store. Chu Chun-hyuk asked the children if they were hurt anywhere. Chul said they were fine and added that he had protected his sister. The assistant told Lee Dae-soo that he had obtained information about this guy. Tank told his assistant to forget about it. There was no need to find out anything. Chu-hyuk suggested ordering chicken for dinner after they got home. Chul was delighted, but Eun-jung said she wanted pork stomach. Chu-hyuk smiled and suggested ordering both. The children, of course, had no objections. He noticed the saleswoman who was looking after his brother and sister. The girl thanked the young man for his hard work and said that if it weren't for him, many people could have died. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that he was the one who should thank her for looking after the children. The girl was touched and, in a burst of emotion, hugged the young man. Tears welled up in her eyes. Chu Chun-hyuk couldn't help himself and blushed with embarrassment. The grateful townspeople saw the young man with the children and said that he was the guy they had seen on the news. The girls in the crowd noted that he was handsome. It turns out that he is not only talented, but also good-looking. Someone added that thanks to Cho Chun-hyuk, his wife and children were able to survive. This person said that he would be a fan of the young man for the rest of his life. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised. What was really going on? How did these people know his name? The television reported that the day before, in the center of the capital, a single tank had held off 5 D-class monsters for about an hour. That tank turned out to be Choi Chun-hyuk. He received the highest possible S-class rating by unanimous decision of the judges. The guild president said that being a celebrity was a lot of trouble. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that he was not a celebrity and that people should not laugh at him. The guild leader suggested that dealing with unexpected fame after the gate incident must be exhausting. Chu-hyuk admitted that since morning, he had been bombarded with calls from people trying to recruit him. He was also receiving interview requests from all over. Fortunately, he had received help in dealing with most of them, so now it wasn't so unbearable. The president said that this is why the association is needed. If any problems arise, the young man can contact him at any time. Choi Chun-hyuk thanked him and asked why the president had invited him. The president explained that there was a request from the state to register the young man as special. Special people are those who break the generally accepted class rules with something extraordinary. This does not necessarily mean that they are stronger than the S-class. They can be thought of as mutants. Because of this, unlike other awakened ones, there are no legal requirements for them to register. The head added that in this case, the young man does not have to register. However, if he becomes special, he will receive significant support from the government. Choi Chun-hyuk asked if he needed to go to the US to register. The president confirmed that the young man was right. Moreover, the process itself is incredibly difficult. Many have applied, but only 3 have been officially registered. The guild leader added that it was not an easy path. Choi Chun-hyuk said he would think about it. He cannot leave the country because of his brother and sister. The president suggested leaving this issue for later. Regarding the contract with the association, it was decided to increase the level of support provided to the young man. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised because the contract had already been signed. The president acknowledged this, but the initial contract was drawn up for a promising newcomer, a potential star. Now the association had prepared new terms suitable for someone special. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised again. He had not yet been registered as special. Wasn't it premature? The head replied that the young man deserved better treatment. The president said he didn't know anyone who could hold off 5 D-class monsters. The support fund was increased from 1 to 5 billion. The tax exemption remains in effect. The amount of A-class equipment was increased from 2 to 5. In addition, a magnificent car would be provided for hunters. Chu Chun-hyuk suggested that with the increase in support, the conditions would become stricter. The head said that this was not the case. The conditions remained the same. Chu Chun-hyuk said he was more than satisfied with these conditions. He asked if he could receive the promised car today. The young man received the desired car and then contacted Lee Dae-soo, reminding him that he is the main and only fan of the tank. He is calling because he needs help. The guy added that it wasn't really help, just a meeting if Lee Dae-soo had free time. Lee Dae-soo replied that he was always free for this person. Choi Chun-hyuk said he could come right away. The young man put his hand in his pocket and said he would be there in 10 minutes. Chu Chun-hyuk took out a card. Lee Dae-soo asked what the purpose of the meeting was. Choi Chun-hyuk thought that Karen's Blessing and Mountain Split were too valuable to just sell. The young man tried to acquire the Mountain Split skill, but was denied. The user's class did not match the skill type. Chu Hyuk asked Lee Dae-soo about his plans. Didn't the incident with the gate distract attention from the tank to him? Lee Dae-soo asked, so what? Choi Chun-hyuk said he had prepared a small gift for Hyun, who had saved his life. The young man added that it was not just a gift, but a tank skill card, Mountain Split. Lee Dae-soo was surprised. Was the young man talking about a skill card of which there were only 9 copies in the whole world? Chu Chun-hyuk confirmed that it was a tank skill that, depending on how it was used, could deal more damage than an attacker. It was considered the most desirable skill among tanks. Lee Dae-soo said it was just crazy. The young man added that he thought it would be better if a low-level First Awakened did not use this skill, but rather the #1 tank in the country. If Lee Dae-soo was interested, he was willing to sell the skill at a fair price. Lee Dae-soo couldn't believe it. The young man was offering the most coveted tank skills solely out of fan devotion. Choi Chun-hyuk said that in return, he wanted to ask for a favor. The young man added that the request would come into effect once Lee Dae-soo had mastered the skill. The meeting between the young men took place at the central office. Chu Chung-hyuk placed the skill card itself in front of Lee Dae-soo. Lee Dae-soo couldn't believe his eyes. It was indeed a real skill card. Cho Chun-hyuk added that the fair price for the card was 40 billion coins. The protagonist added that if the card were put up for auction, it could fetch an even higher price. His colleague noted that this was indeed the case. The card could fetch tens of billions. Why didn't the young man sell it himself? Chu Chun-hyuk asked if it wasn't up to the seller to decide what to do with the goods. He decided that since he couldn't use it himself, he would give it to someone he admired rather than sell it to someone he didn't even know. The young man explained that it was better to give it to someone he admired than to sell it to someone he didn't even know. Cho Hwan was surprised. Could the guy really not use it? Choi Chun-hyuk explained that he had just awakened, so he couldn't apply this skill. Besides, it wasn't his specialty. Lee Dae-soo asked how much free cash he had right now. Cho Hwan replied, 20 billion, exactly half. Lee Dae-soo asked Cho Chun-hyuk if he only accepted cash, because barter was also an option. Cho Chun-hyuk clarified that barter with tank meant equipment. Cho Hwan said that he owned several buildings that he had purchased for investment purposes. They were now standing in front of one of them. Chu Chun-hyuk wondered how things had turned out that way, that he had become the owner of an entire building. Lee Dae-soo asked if the young man liked the building. The answer was yes. The deal was approved by both parties and the barter took place. Choi Chun-hyuk gave a skill card in exchange for the building. Lee Dae-soo said that he would start learning the mountain split skill right away. He simply couldn't wait. The tank activated the skill and began to acquire the necessary knowledge and abilities. The system reported that the hunter had successfully learned the skill. Now you can check it in the skills window. Chu Chun-hyuk congratulated Lee Dae-soo. Now in Asia, along with China's Wang Weichong, Hunter Lee Dae-soo is the only tank to have learned Mountain Split. The protagonist added that Lee Dae-soo's position in the Asian top rankings would also rise. Lee Dae-soo shook the young man's hand and said that rankings meant nothing to him. It was enough for him that he had mastered the skill. Choi Chun-hyuk created another copy. Lee Dae-soo noted that it was the young man who should be congratulated, as he had become the owner of a building at such a young age. What are his future plans? Chu Chun-hyuk said that he had decided to start working as a mercenary, as he had originally planned. His priority now is to hunt regularly in the beginner zone. He plans to take only D-class assignments. Lee Dae-soo suggested that if the young man has a building, then he must have plenty of money. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that the world is unpredictable and that he has a younger brother and sister to take care of. The young man noted that after losing his parents during the Great Catastrophe, hard times ensued. As a result, his youth was a continuous nightmare. Therefore, he does not want his brother and sister's future to turn into a nightmare as well. He wants to give them a life free from financial difficulties, a life filled with freedom and hope. Lee Dae-soo said that this was unlikely. The Great Catastrophe is only the beginning. The world is gradually moving towards destruction. The frequency of sudden gates and terrible monsters appearing is increasing day by day, while the resources to fight them are running out. On top of that, now they have to deal with villains. First it was Deku, now it's Kanam. Fear of a serial killer of hunters is spreading. Lee Dae-soo noticed that there had been a series of attacks on hunters in the Kanam area recently. They say the suspect is a well-known villain who was active in Daegu. His name is Chajin Su. Lee Dae-soo said that it's already hard enough for them to deal with monsters, and now they'll have to fight people too. Lee Dae-soo suggested that what the boys really need for the future is not this building. They need a peaceful sky above their heads without monsters and people like the Awakened. The young man was hiding in a secluded place. He thought he had been in contact with the association for a long time. Why hadn't they sent help yet? An armed man in a hood approached him. The wounded guy was surprised. Chajin Su? He was working in the Daegu area. Chajin Su asked if the guy had ever seen villains who stayed in one place. They come and go as they please. The villain wondered why his teammates were so heartless. How could they abandon their wounded comrade and run away without even looking back? The wounded hunter jumped up and rushed at the villain with cries, but the villain fell silent, not letting him get close. The villain, Chajin Su, parried the attack and knocked the young man to the ground again. The villain said that if the boy hadn't called for help, he wouldn't have been in such a hurry and would have enjoyed himself. but now there was nothing he could do. The villain asked if Choi Chun-hyuk knew anything about him. Recently, this guy had been in the news. The wounded man began to curse and call the villain all sorts of nasty names. The villain stabbed him several more times and said that the guy would have died anyway under any other circumstances. The villain took out his smartphone and watched the videos he was interested in. The video showed that Tank had fought 5 monsters alone. The villain said that he hadn't had a decent toy in a long time. A week later, hunting grounds near the city of Goyang, a zone for beginners. Hunters hone their skills and fight monsters of varying difficulty. Chu Chun-hyuk said that this was the last monster for today. Tank told the young man not to hold back, as there was very little left. However, there was more than one monster. Our hero must not relax yet. The archer jumped to the side, firing a shot in midair. The archer told the attacker to block this monster. The young man swung his blades and delivered a powerful blow. A unique skill was activated, imbuing the weapon with powerful force. The monster was attacked, and explosions appeared on its body. Chu Chun-hyuk said that now there was only one monster left. Stop provoking it, just destroy it. So Yejin pulled the bowstring and shot an arrow straight at the target. The monster was shot through the head and the target was hit. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that solo it would take 20 minutes, and a team hunt would take 2 hours and 20 minutes. However, there was no choice. People from all sides already called him unusual. The squad leader approached and praised Choi Chun-hyuk for his excellent work. He said that thanks to his provocation, today's hunt went much more smoothly than usual. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that there was no need to thank him. He was only grateful that he had been allowed to join today's hunt. Yoo Sang-ji admitted that he was a little surprised. A few weeks ago, the young man was just a porter, and now he had suddenly become unusual and even wanted to work as a mercenary. Had he borrowed money from loan sharks? Chu Chun-hyuk said that the reason was different. Perhaps someday in the future, he would want to start his own guild. He noted that, unfortunately, he did not yet understand how to do this and did not have enough experience. Here he would like to learn from the team leader, Yoo Sang-jin. Yoo Sang-jin said that a guild and a team are not the same thing, but there are similar aspects to managing a group. Yoo Sang-jin asked why the young man wouldn't take over the leadership of their team. He added that he himself is the team leader, but will not be able to continue in this role in the future, as he plans to leave the rookie zone. Yoo Sang-jin noted that one cannot remain in the rookie zone forever, and believes that Choi Chun-hyuk may be suitable for the position. It may not be a guild, but the young man will gain a lot of useful experience that will definitely come in handy in the future. Choi Chun-hyuk said that he couldn't do it yet because he didn't have the necessary qualifications. Hiller pointed out that Tank had always been the leader of their team, but the last time, it was thanks to Choi Chun-hyuk that they avoided death while hunting. The whole team owes the young man their lives, and he is more than qualified. The attacker agreed. Even today, thanks to his provocation management, they caught 3 monsters, while the others only managed to catch 2. They earn a lot of money, and their second awakening is getting closer. Choi Chun-hyuk is their lucky charm. All the members of the group supported the captain's proposal. Yoo Sang-jin said that from today they have a new team leader. The attacker congratulated the hero and told him to take care of his team in the future. Sang-jun added that Choi Chun-hyuk should do his best for himself and for society. In that case, the results would naturally benefit everyone. Yoo Sang-jun noted that this is the essence of the role of a team leader. For the rest, you can trust your comrades. He asked if the young man had heard about the villain who was hunting hunters in the beginner zones near Gangnam. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that he had. Yoo Sang-jun added that this scoundrel was looking for hunters in the beginner zones, attacking from ambush. The association was already forming a team to search for and punish him. Yoo Sang-jin advised to always keep the emergency communication system active. He suggested discussing the rest over drinks. Chu Chung-hyuk answered the incoming call. It was his younger brother and sister's guardian. After the conversation, Yoo Sang-jun asked why the young man was so serious. Had something happened? Chu Hyuk said that they would have to postpone drinking. He had come to the school to discuss his younger brother's behavior. The teacher noted that Eunchul had been having difficulty concentrating in class lately. In addition, he often fought with his friends. The situation had worsened over the past few days, so she had to contact his older brother. She felt that Eunchul's case was more serious. Chu Hyuk asked what was causing such aggression. The guardian replied that the boy said he wanted to be as strong as his older brother. Eunchul insists that he wants to become strong and wake up as a tank, like his brother. A stern reprimand and warning did not work. The guardian noted that in this regard, She would like to ask the young man for something. From time to time, they asked parents to volunteer as temporary teachers. It would be great if Hunter Cho Chun-hyuk could briefly explain to the children what the hunting profession is like and share a few stories about battles with monsters. Chu-hyuk was surprised. Were they really asking him to be a temporary teacher? The guardian asked that the young man not feel too burdened. The children were very interested in the hunting profession, and besides, they would have a good time. Chu-hyuk left the office and saw his younger brother sitting nearby. Yunchul apologized and said he was wrong. Choi Chun-hyuk asked why he had been fighting. The boy explained that he had told the others that his older brother was a tank, but they didn't believe him. He had to prove it with arguments. Yunchul said that the other boys called him a liar and said that someone like him couldn't possibly have an older brother. Chu-hyuk was surprised. Was Yunchul really upset about this? He told his brother to bring his friends over later, and he would buy them something tasty. Tears welled up in Yunchul's eyes. Left alone on the roof of a tall building, the protagonist thought, if Yunchul decides to become a hunter when he grows up, it will be impossible to stop him. If it is meant to happen, sooner or later it will. After all, that's how he himself became a villain. Chu-hyuk remembered Lee Dae-soo's words that a life full of hope was impossible. The great catastrophe was only the beginning. The world was gradually moving toward destruction. The frequency of sudden gates and terrible monsters appearing was increasing day by day. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that they needed a world without monsters or awakened ones. The young man activated the teleportation magic circle. Unfortunately, such a world without monsters and awakened beings would never come to pass. The teleportation magic circle appeared near the car. The young man got out and got into the car. How long could he continue to protect his brother and sister in this world? What if he died in the next battle with a monster? Chu Chun-hyuk decided that then the younger ones would have to find a way to survive on their own. He contacted Hyo-soo and said he wanted to ask for a favor. Chu-hyuk asked if there were any hunters hunting in Gangnam today. The young man asked to check mainly the areas for beginners. The protagonist was told that right now there was a team led by Tank Jo Gyusun hunting near the intersection by the Gangnam district office. The car arrived at the point marked on the map. Hyo-soo asked why the young man was asking about this. Choi Chun-hyuk got out of the car and said that their team was planning to move to the Gangnam area soon. He explained that he wanted to meet them first and say hello. If they thought he had his eye on their loot, it could cause misunderstandings on both sides. Chu Chun-hyuk thanked them and said he would call back. The young man activated a holographic map with a search for awakened beings. He thought that if he couldn't leave his brother and sister a world without monsters and awakened ones, then at least he should get rid of one of the scourges destroying the world. Chu Chun-hyuk decided that if he could do something, he had to act right now. He saw a point on the map, took aim with his bow, and said that Chajin Su was there. The arrow flew straight to its target, rapidly approaching the strike zone. At that moment, the hunter was fighting a huge monster. The arrow pierced the hunter through and through. The hunter coughed and blood came out of his mouth. The young man was delighted to see that the arrow had reached its target. The archer listened to the broadcast. The hunters were surprised. Where did this arrow come from? Who could do such a thing at a time when Xeris was approaching? The archer said that these hunters were actually the most useless. He continued to shoot, indignant at how they could think of fleeing just because one tank had died. The archer decided that next time he would aim for the head. Someone said that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. The young man looked around and asked in surprise, "Who's here?" The stranger with the arrow in his hand asked how he should destroy Chajin Su so that it would make all the headlines. The archer didn't understand what was going on. How did this guy know his name? Were they acquainted? Chu Chun-hyuk broke the arrow and said that they didn't know each other, but that Chajin Su would soon learn about him. The villain was indignant. Was this guy really joking around right now? Chu Chun-hyuk silently threw the broken arrow aside. He said he knew this guy. He had betrayed the villain he used to work with and sold his location. The young man added that it was this scoundrel who forced him to use the rollback stone before he had finished his training. Chajin Su didn't understand what he was talking about and said that this guy was out of his mind. Chu Chun-hyuk replied that Chajin Su wouldn't understand anything anyway, so he might as well just attack. Was he afraid? Chajin Su got angry, clenched his fists, and rushed to attack. Choi Chun-hyuk activated the quick movement skill. Chajin Su approached quickly and prepared to strike. The villain began swinging his fists, but he couldn't reach his target. Chajin Su began to swing his legs, but the result was the same. His opponent kept dodging. Chu Chun-hyuk dodged again, and his opponent flew to the side. The protagonist noted that he did not expect to see such confusion on this guy's face. With his first strike, Choi Chun-hyuk punched his opponent in the nose. Our hero noticed that Chajin Su had failed. The protagonist added that after today, his opponent would no longer be able to show such a face. Suddenly, thick, acrid smoke appeared between the rivals. Choi Chun-hyuk was surprised. What was that? His eyes could not see anything. Taking advantage of the confusion, the villain took out a sharp knife. The protagonist thought that Chajin Su had decided to use various tricks. At one point, the villain appeared behind the hero, holding a knife at the ready. Choi Chun-hyuk activated his hyper-perception skill. Chajin Su rushed at his opponent, confident of victory. However, Choi Chun-hyuk managed to dodge and counterattack. A moment later, Chajin Su was already lying on the ground, receiving punches to the face. Meanwhile, Choi Chun-hyuk periodically rubbed his eyes, not understanding what powder had been thrown in them. Chajin Su continued to lie on the ground and begged for mercy, claiming that he was willing to give up everything he had accumulated in his life. Choi Chun-hyuk asked if he was talking about the things hidden in the villa in Haeundae. Don't worry, they will be confiscated without the owner being present. Chajin Su was surprised. How did his rival know this? Choi Chun-hyuk asked. Hadn't the villain himself boasted about it? Choi Chun-hyuk said that when he lived as a villain, he also destroyed many awakened ones. He sold everything he could collect, turning it into cash. Swinging his fist once more, Choi Chun-hyuk asked, "What is the point of accumulating wealth?" The villain continued to beg for mercy. The blows continued and Chajin Su was immobilized. After a while, the villain's body was found unconscious near the police station. Breaking news reported that the prime suspect in a series of attacks on hunters in the beginner's zone in the Gangnam area was arrested by police last night. Early this morning, around 4 a.m., the police arrested the suspect, Chajin Su. Choi Chun-hyuk thought that before the time rollback, he was on par with Chajin Su in terms of strength, but the difference in strength was obvious. The hero felt that he could tear this guy apart like a piece of paper. Choi Chun-hyuk felt happy, knowing that the criminal had been caught. The hunter appeared before the cameras and admitted that he was ashamed to say it. But because of Chajin Su, hunting in the Gangnam area was extremely difficult. Many even left out of fear. He added that now a huge burden had been lifted, and hunters could focus solely on their work. The president of the association entered the office and apologized for being late. The head asked why the young man had requested a meeting. Was he in trouble? Choi Chun-hyuk replied that he was not in trouble, but there were a few points he would like to discuss and change in the contract. The man said he would listen to the request with interest. Choi Chun-hyuk noted that he would have to break the promise he had made to the president. The young man stopped by his old friend's house. Opening the door, he was surprised. Who was calling so early in the morning? Choi Chun-hyuk was surprised himself. How could anyone sleep at such an hour? Jang Su opened the door, saw Choi Chun-hyuk, bowed, and greeted the hunter. Choi Chun-hyuk asked in surprise why Jang Su looked like a mafia member. Jang Su apologized and asked what had brought the hunter there. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that he wanted to tell the grandmother something. Jang Su called out to the grandmother that someone had come to see her, explaining that Choi Chun-hyuk wanted to talk to her. He added that it was very important, so the grandmother should hurry. Choi Chun-hyuk placed a crystal on the table in front of the grandmother. The woman was surprised. What was it? The young man explained that it was a stone that awakened the attacker. The grandmother noticed that it was a very expensive item. She had heard that it was worth over $1 billion. Choi Chun-hyuk acknowledged its market value. The grandmother was surprised. Why did he bring it here? The hunter said that if the grandmother agreed, he planned to give the stone to Jang Su. The woman asked, "Why give such a valuable item to that fool?" Choi Chun-hyuk explained that he had a lot of work to do and needed a reliable person who could perform difficult tasks. He believed that Jang Su was a suitable candidate. The grandmother was surprised. Could her grandson really be reliable? Jang Su was indignant. Choi Chun-hyuk noted that although Jang Su was a little absent-minded, he would not betray anyone. The woman agreed. Although the young man had been problematic in his youth, betrayal was not expected of him. He added that even though the grandmother had tried to dissuade her grandson, he had become a porter and gone hunting. If he was going to dangerous areas, it would be better to take him along. Choi Chun-hyuk said he would take responsibility for Jang Su's safety. The grandmother agreed. Jang Su was delighted and thanked his grandmother. The woman told her grandson not to act like he had been awakened. The grandmother asked if Jang Su would become part of the association, like Choi Chun-hyuk. The hero explained that he works as a private mercenary, so he is not officially a member of the association. Chong-su asked if the association agreed with this and noted that they would hardly like it. The president of the association asked if Choi Chun-hyuk was going to work as a mercenary. The young man confirmed this and added that to do so, he would need to register an office and set up a business. The head explained that this was necessary for tax purposes. Although taxes on monster hunting had been abolished, mercenary activities were a different matter. Choi Chun-hyuk added that if the president had no objections, he would register his own guild. The president now understood why the young man had said it was necessary to break his promise. Choi Chun-hyuk explained that if he registered a guild but did not manage it, there would be talk of taxes and strange rumors. The head said that registration in guilds was prohibited, but the young man planned to create his own. He asked if it was not possible. The head explained that these were the terms of the contract. If the young man received support from the association, it would not be able to help him with this. She added that she did not understand why Choi Chun-hyuk was working as a mercenary, since he already worked for the association and hunted with the team and had earned a lot of money. Choo-hyuk explained that if he could do something, he wanted to do more. The young man added that he used to think that destroying a few monsters would not change anything, but he recently changed his mind. Even the disappearance of one monster makes the world a better place. As a hunter, he wants to destroy as many monsters as possible while he has the opportunity. The head was surprised. Did the young man come to the association just to talk about monsters? Cho Chun-hyuk said that everyone had misunderstood. The president suggested that while the young man was at the association, would he like to register his guild right away? If he did so, requests for his assistance would have to be submitted through the commission. But with the right organization, legitimate requests would not cause problems for either side. Choo-hyuk told his grandmother and Chong-su that there was no need to worry about this. He had already negotiated with the association. Jang-su asked again, "Is that really true?" Grandma gave her grandson a slap on the back of the head. Does he think Choi Chun-hyuk would lie? Grandmother said she believed Choi Chun-hyuk. The young man noted that he had something else to say. They would be moving soon. The woman said it was about time. If the young man had earned money, it was worth moving to a more convenient place. Choo-hyuk asked if his grandmother wanted to go with them. The woman was surprised. What was he talking about? He explained that after their parents passed away early, he and his brother and sister relied heavily on their grandmother. If Chong-su became busy, his grandmother would be alone a lot and might feel lonely. The woman told Choi Chun-hyuk to forget about the offer. Why move somewhere else when she had excellent housing? Choo-hyuk rose from the table, bowed and thanked the woman for caring for him as if he were her own child. A few weeks later, the young people stood in front of the office entrance with the sign J.H. Mercenary Corp. Jang-su was thrilled. "This is so cool." Choi Chun-hyuk warned him not to get carried away. Choo-hyuk and Chong-su decided to eat something in the dining room. Chong-su said that it looked very tasty. On moving or opening days, you have to eat changjamun. Choi Chun-hyuk promised that he would treat the young man to something more expensive later. Chong-su thanked him and said he would never forget his kindness. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that there was no need to thank him. It was just a bowl of food. Chong-su clarified that he meant not only that, but also the awakening stone. Awakening stones had become rare, so they were worth a fortune. And yet Choi Chun-hyuk had given him this stone. Choo Chun-hyuk told Chong-su not to feel burdened. First of all, the stone wasn't his. Our hero explained that he gave it to him because he felt indebted. Chang-su was surprised. What kind of debt was it? A girl approached the young men and was surprised to see what they were eating. There were two girls and they noted that it was impressive that young people were starting a mercenary guild. Chun-hyuk was surprised. Could it be Kang Ji-yoon, the sorceress from the Genesis Guild? The girl reminded him that they were seeing each other for the first time since the awakening test at the association. Jang-su said that Kang Ji-yoon was even more beautiful in person. Choi Chun-hyuk told the young man to calm down. Ji-yoon thanked him and added that the young man made her feel uncomfortable. Choi Chun-hyuk asked how the girl found out where he was. At that moment, Lee Dae-soo entered the room and said that it was disappointing. He noted that Choi Chun-hyuk should have told him about the plans to open the guild. Choo-hyuk was even more surprised. How could Lee Dae-soo have found out about it? Kang Ji-yoon showed him her smartphone screen and said she had seen it. Someone named Park Chang-soo had been messaging her on direct the whole time. Choo-hyuk was surprised. How could Chang-soo write such things on social media without his permission? The young man replied that he was trying to help with promotion. Chang-soo added that it was business and marketing was very important. Lee Dae-soo asked why Choi Chun-hyuk was tormenting this guy. After all, promotion was really necessary. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that he was the only one in this mercenary guild, so he planned to keep everything a secret. Lee Dae-soo said that now he understood everything. And now these two are just sitting and eating changjamen on such a great day. Choo Chung-hyuk apologized and added that if he had known Lee Dae-soo was coming, he would have definitely prepared something better. Lee Dae-soo said not to worry. He had ordered catering in advance. Choo Chung-hyuk asked what had been ordered. Lee Dae-soo replied that there was no need to thank him. It was just a small gift from him. Choo Chun-hyuk smiled and thanked the Lee Dae-soo. Hae-soo congratulated our hero on registering the guild. The girl asked if the building really belonged to him. Hee-soo added that owning a building at such a young age was admirable, and she was very jealous. Choi Chun-hyuk blushed with embarrassment and said he felt uncomfortable. Hee-soo asked why he was so embarrassed. Choo Chun-hyuk replied that people treated him with such respect simply because he was the owner of the building. Hae-soo said that this was very typical of Choi Chun-hyuk. His behavior made him even cooler. Hee-soo asked how their team's hunting would be affected by the mercenaries' work. Choo-hyuk replied that he would assign tasks so that one would not interfere with the other. There was no need to worry. Hae-soo said that after hearing this, she felt relieved. Ji-eun smiled and sarcastically said she was glad Hee-soo felt better. Hee-soo was indignant. She was talking to Choi Chun-hyuk. Why was Ji-eun interfering? Kang Ji-eun apologized and said she was in a hurry. She needed to tell Choi Chun-hyuk something. It wouldn't take long. Hae-soo said that it annoyed her and walked away. Kang Ji-eun said she would get straight to the point. She didn't come here just to congratulate him. She had a request. Choo-hyuk was surprised. Did the Genesis Guild really have a request for him? Ji-eun asked if the young man would accept a D-class assignment. Choo-hyuk replied that their tanks should be more than capable of handling D-class monsters. Why did they need this? Ji-eun added that the reward for the quest was set at 1 billion. Choi Chun-hyuk would of course receive the standard tank share. Jung-soo replied that they would of course take the request. The young man noted that it was an insane amount of money. Besides, it was Choi Chun-hyuk's first job. Most people don't turn down their first assignment. Ji-eun asked what Choi Chun-hyuk would say. If the guy agreed, she was ready to transfer the money right away. Choo Chung-hyuk agreed and added that he had 2 conditions. The young man asked if Ji-eun was interested in purchasing a skill card. Choo-hyuk added that the card was called Kirin's Blessing. It was a skill card for a buff. Kang Ji-eun asked in surprise, "Does the young man really have this skill card?" The answer was yes. Her companion said she had just checked. The price of this skill card was about 13 billion. Choo Chun-hyuk added that if the girls were interested, he could show it to them. The sorceress asked, "What is the second condition?" The young man said that if the girl learned this skill, she would simply shake his hand. Ji-eun replied that they had agreed. A week later, Gangnam Advanced Zone. There was nothing but destruction all around. The hunting party emerged from the spatial portal and found themselves at the mission site. Choo Chun-hyuk asked if they weren't supposed to get to the beginner zone by transport. The girl replied that most guilds did so because they only had first stage awakened teleporters. But with third stage awakened teleporters, like hers, they could move directly to the advanced zone. Ji-eun asked about the location of the monsters. The cartographer replied that at the moment they were concentrated in 3 main areas. In one of the areas, 2 points were very close to each other, while the others were much further apart. Ji-eun said that in that case, they should head to the place where there was only 1 monster. The cartographer noted that the next closest area was also occupied by other guilds. Ji-eun was indignant. What did that mean? They had agreed in advance that their hunting grounds would not overlap. The young man replied that Hunter Lee Dae-soo from Tabak had heard that Choi Chun-hyuk would be their tank. So he simply told them to take that zone. Ji-eun replied that this would not work and decided to talk to the tank directly. Choi Chun-hyuk told the girl that everything was fine. He would just take on all the responsibilities of the tank. Ji-eun was surprised. Did Choi Chun-hyuk really mean that he would be a tank for both guilds at the same time? The young man replied that he had already tried doing so, and it was tolerable. He just needed to increase the provocation time a little. The guy added that there shouldn't be any particular problems. Aggressive monsters were moving toward the group of hunters. The girl said that this guy was certainly a guild master, but he was still D-class. Wouldn't it be safer to proceed with caution? Kang Ji-eun replied that there was no need to worry. He had already tanked 5 monsters on his own. Besides, this guy was special. Jiun said that her companion was acting strangely. She usually didn't worry about others. Could it be that she liked Cho Chun-hyuk? The girl explained that this was not the case. He just seemed like a good person to her. Jiun asked what she meant by that. The girl explained that most tanks with such a level of fame usually behave arrogantly because they consider themselves better than others. However, Cho Chun-hyuk did his best to shake hands with all the guild members at the beginning. He always remains humble, and that's why she thought he was a good person. Jiun received a signal that it was time to start preparing. Chu-hyuk said that as soon as he gave the signal, they should focus on light attacks. Chu-hyuk found himself at the center of the action and engaged in combat with the monsters, drawing their attacks upon himself. The tactic worked, and the monster rushed at our hero. The young man thought that he couldn't use the copied skills or abilities he had received from Park Kang-ho. Chu Chun-hyuk admitted that dealing with two monsters at once was still difficult. In fact, hunting alone might have been much easier. Chu Chun-hyuk shouted to his colleagues to start attacking, while he activated the suppression skill. The hunters jumped out of cover and began to carry out their tasks in unison. The team members saw that Choi Chun-hyuk was standing alone against a huge monster. Chu Chun-hyuk thought if he hadn't taken the Ring of Sunset from Jinsu's house, he would be in big trouble now. He looked at the ring. If Jinsu found out about this, he would be upset. However, this ring had been his main goal from the very beginning. The Ring of Sunset was activated. Chu Chun-hyuk received additional health points, which was impressive. However, the most important thing was the restoration of 1 health point per second. That was zombie-level survivability. When the battle with the monsters was over, he could catch his breath and look around. Jiun said that the payment had been transferred and asked him to check the information. Choi Chun-hyuk confirmed that the funds had been received in his personal account. Kang Jian thanked the young man for his cooperation and hard work. After completing the first task for the Genesis Guild, requests continued to come in from small and medium-sized guilds. Due to the fact that tanks were already rare, the most capable D-class tanks eventually moved to the major guilds. Nevertheless, our hero worked tirelessly for an entire month. When there was no mercenary work, he joined the team on hunts. If there were no hunts, he hunted alone. Chu Chun-hyuk decided he had reached his limit. He could no longer continue like this alone. At some point, the young man felt that structural changes were beginning to occur within him. What was this? The system reported that the second awakening was complete. All characteristics had been increased. Additional points were awarded. A new core function was added. New skills were acquired. Skill combination, skill growth, and copy field. The unique skills of the Spearmaster were improved. One case previously used by Park Kang-ho was transferred. Chu Chun-hyuk understood that with the second awakening, his health and force had increased significantly. Especially his health. It was almost twice as high as before. If he invested all his extra points in health and stamina, he could be a tank even at sea level. That was almost the level of a 3rd degree awakened. The young man activated the information window and decided to take a look at his new skills. In addition to the inherited random skill, something else had appeared. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised. Was it really possible to combine 2 skills into one? You could combine all the options together and even create a completely new skill. He thought that if he combined Lightning Strike and Slicing Mountain, he could create a unique skill. If you avoid combinations of passive and active skills, the number of possible skills is practically infinite. The protagonist was overexcited and decided to calm down first. He checked the next skill. If the secondary awakening gave him this, what would the 3rd level awakening give him? Now he had to check the skill that interested him the most. A universal skill, the summoning of a Valkyrie, whose characteristics are proportional to the summoner's base parameters. The young man realized what skill he had accidentally received from Park Kang-ho. Summoning a Valkyrie. Chu Chun-hyuk immediately decided to test this skill and activated it. A glowing ball appeared in front of him in the square, so bright that the hero even squinted. A girl appeared from the glowing ball in front of the young man and greeted him. Choi Chun-hyuk asked if she was a Valkyrie. Chu-hyuk looked at the information window again and said that his heart almost jumped out of his chest. The young man realized that it was actually the Valkyrie's characteristics window, but something seemed strange to him. Why were the equipment skill slots completely empty? The girl explained that the gentleman had to set them himself. She said that if he equipped her, the gear would be applied immediately. Chu Chun-hyuk understood how it worked and added that it felt a little awkward at first. The protagonist activated the summon from his subspace pocket. The young man began to take various items out of the subspace, looking for the necessary items. After a while, equipment began to appear on the girl. The young man expressed his hope that Valkyrie would understand, although she might not like the equipment. Gradually, the amount of equipment on the girl increased. At least she was no longer standing barefoot. Chu Chun-hyuk explained that he had almost no women's equipment left. He asked the girl if she had a name, or if she had not been given one in the first place. The girl replied that her previous master, Park Kang-ho, had given her the name Park Chi-yeon. Chu Chun-hyuk said that Park Chi-yeon was an inappropriate name. The girl clearly looked Western, and a Korean name would not suit her. Valkyrie explained that Park Chi-yeon was the name of the previous master's younger sister. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised. Was she really Park Kang-ho's sister? He remembered how Park Kang-ho had handed him a photo and asked him to find his family and take care of them. Park Kang-ho warned that if the young man broke his promise, he would not forgive him even after his death. The girl said that if her name was inconvenient for the master, he could change it. Since the master had changed according to the rules, she should receive a new name. Chu Chun-hyuk suggested naming the girl Sarah. Valkyrie replied that if the master gave her a name, any name would do. Chu Chun-hyuk asked whether she needed to be given orders constantly during combat, or whether she could assess the situation herself. Sarah said that it was enough to set the basic strategy and direction. She would then act according to the situation. If a new order came in, it would take priority. Chu-hyuk asked how Park Kang-ho had used her in battle. Sarah replied that she could recover even after being killed, so last time she acted as a defender and went to the front lines. Chu Chun-hyuk activated the mapping mode. The young man decided to test Sarah on one target. This target was marked with a red dot. Chu Chun-hyuk went one-on-one against a huge monster. It was Blink. He said that he was not Park Kang-ho, so Sarah would help him not as a defender, but as an attacker. The girl activated her sword and said that it was dangerous for the gentleman to play the role of a defender. Sarah approached the monster from behind and explained that she could recover even after death, but the gentleman did not have that option. Chu Chun-hyuk explained that this would be more effective. He would take the aggro, and the girl would focus exclusively on dealing damage. The monster began to approach our hero. The young man told Sarah to wait while he drew the enemy's attention. The protagonist added that as soon as he gave the command to attack, she should immediately use lightning strike. Chu Chun-hyuk activated stun charge. The monster was disoriented. After that, lightning strike was performed. After the slashing strike, the monster screamed loudly, having suffered significant damage. Chu Chun-hyuk decided that there was no point in holding back for long. The protagonist used a shield attack. The monster was unable to withstand such an attack and was knocked out for a while. Chu Chun-hyuk shouted for Sarah to start the attack. The girl immediately rushed into battle. Sarah shouted that she was using lightning strike. The girl approached the monster from behind again. This was followed by a mountain cleaver strike. The monster cried out in pain. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised. Had Sarah always been this strong? The young man thought it would be good if they continued at the same pace. The monster was destroyed. Chu Chun-hyuk decided that the two of them could defeat even D-rank opponents. He asked Sarah if she had emotions. The girl replied that she did have feelings. Sarah explained that she used to be human before she became a Valkyrie. Valkyries are those who once belonged to a lost world. The girl added that those who have achieved certain outstanding merits are selected from among them. Our hero approached the girl and said that he had heard about her as a true master. He wanted to order some equipment. The girl said that their workshop was not currently accepting orders. She was very sorry. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised. Did they really not accept orders even for S-rank equipment? The girl was surprised and asked again, S-rank? Chu Chun-hyuk explained that he had materials from a B-rank monster. He wanted to order S-rank equipment made from them, but if the girl refused, he would find another workshop. The master was surprised. How did the young man manage to obtain B-rank materials? Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised. Did it really matter? The only thing that mattered was that he had them. If she absolutely had to know their origin, he would have to leave. The master said that she wasn't really interested in that. It was enough for her to just work with the B-rank materials. Chu Chun-hyuk said he needed a full set of armor for a tank and a set of female armor for an attacker, as well as 2 small shields. The young man asked how long it would take. The master asked if the tank needed heavy armor and clarified the lady's measurements. Chu Chun-hyuk replied that she was about 170 centimeters tall. The master asked what her bust size was. The young man was embarrassed by the question. The master clarified. Maybe a full B. Choi Chun-hyuk told the master to make it for that size. The girl said she understood and that this information would be sufficient to complete the work. Chu Chung-hyuk asked how long it would take to make. The master said she wanted to approach the work carefully, so it would take about 5 months. Chu-hyuk thought that in any case, he had enough equipment at the moment. There were still 6 months left before the sudden rift appeared. Chu-hyuk shook the master's hand and said he agreed. The girl asked when the young man could deliver the materials. The young man replied, right now. Choi Chun-hyuk asked if the girl knew where the Taebak Hyun Shinso agency was located. According to his information, it should be nearby. The master confirmed that the agency was nearby and offered to show him the way. At the agency, the young man greeted our hero and asked how he could help. Chu-hyuk showed him the photo. The young man added that he wanted to find the girl in the photo. Chu Chung-hyuk explained that the girl's name was Park Chi-yeon. A week later, in the personal training room, Choi Chun-hyuk and Valkyrie practiced hand-to-hand combat techniques against a huge monster. Sarah approached the monster and activated Shield Stand. The monster was struck in the neck. Sarah told the gentleman that she was still interacting with him and was unharmed. Chu-hyuk picked up speed and activated Lightning Strike. He also used the Mountain Cleaver Strike. The monster's body was cut to pieces. Sarah reported that the task had been completed. Chu Chun-hyuk asked how much time had passed. The girl replied that the hunt took 8 hours and 20 minutes. The young man said that this would not do. Sarah pointed out that at the very beginning, it took more than 10 hours. Reducing the time by 2 hours was already a significant achievement. Chu Chun-hyuk said that Park Kang-ho had destroyed more than a dozen B-class monsters in just 1 hour and even forced an A-class monster to retreat. The girl expressed her hope that the gentleman would not rush. Park Kang-ho was practically a perfect fighter. She added that Choi Chun-hyuk was getting stronger by constantly combining skills. A new skill was created by combining Perfect Shield and Perfect Attack. During a week of testing, Choi Chun-hyuk discovered that new skills, after being combined, either transform or combine the effects of both skills. The young man warned that sudden rift would appear soon. The two of them were going to hunt C-class monsters together, so it was necessary to minimize the hunting time. The phone rang. It was Chang Tai-woo from the Taebak Hyun Shinso agency. Chang Tai-woo noticed that he was right in front of the office and wanted to bother the young man for a moment. The meeting took place, and Choi Chun-hyuk asked what had happened. Chang Tai-woo asked if he had heard about the outlaws. Chu-hyuk clarified that he was referring to the awakened ones who had settled in dangerous areas, the so-called red zones. Chang Tai-woo explained that most of them were first-level awakened ones. They captured ordinary people who had not had time to evacuate and turned them into slaves, playing at being kings. In a sense, they were even worse than villains. Chu Chun-hyuk admitted that he knew about this. But what did it have to do with Park Chi-yeon? Chang Tai-woo replied that there was a possibility that Park Chi-yeon and her family were now living in slavery under the lawless ones. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised. Why did Chang Tai-woo think so? His interlocutor explained that Park Kang-ho's family had lived in Samsung-don before the disaster, and now Samsung-don had been declared a red zone. They could not confirm whether there was a camp of the lawless there. However, yesterday an informant reported that the lawless had indeed settled in Samsung-don. Choi Chun-hyuk asked if the exact location of their hideout was known. Chang Tai-woo replied that there was no such information yet, but he would be able to find out soon. Chu Chun-hyuk said he planned to continue exploring the area. Chang Tai-woo took the same photo out of his pocket. Towards evening, Choi Chun-hyuk returned home and hugged his younger brother and sister. Nuna was also at home looking after the children. The girl said she had just finished cooking dinner and promised to set the table quickly. Chu-hyuk was, of course, surprised when he saw how much food had been prepared. He asked his younger brother what he thought of the new housekeeper. Yunchul said he liked her. She cooked well, and the house was always clean now. Yunchul added that Nuna played well with them and helped them with their studies. The girl said it was time for her to go home. The housekeeper asked if there was anything else she needed to do. Chu-hyuk told the girl that today was her last day. Would she like to extend her contract? The girl replied that this was exactly what she wanted to talk about. If the gentleman didn't mind, she would like to work on a permanent basis. Chu Chun-hyuk scratched the back of his head and said he didn't mind. There were only children in the house, so he asked the head of the association to help him find a housekeeper, but he didn't expect such a young person to come. At first, he even wondered why the girl was doing this. Jae-hee explained that she was in a difficult financial situation and her mother was ill. Besides, it was very difficult to find a normal job now. The girl added that she also had a personal reason. In fact, the department store employee who took care of these children is her sister. The girl noted that she had always wanted to find an opportunity to thank the gentleman. After her father's death, she was left with only her mother and sister. Shu Hyuk was surprised. Did Chang Jae-hee decide to become a housekeeper because of him? The girl said that 2 weeks ago, the employment agency where she worked received a call. It was a call from the association. They were looking for a worker there. Without much thought, she saw the surname. So she explained the situation at the company and decided to call here. Chang Jae-hee expressed hope that this would not be a problem and that everything was within her power. The girl noted that she gets along well with children. The gentleman would not regret entrusting her with this job. Choi Chun-hyuk said he understood everything and offered to discuss the details of the contract. Mirai Group headquarters is the 6th largest conglomerate in South Korea. The CEO is holding a meeting with the members of the board of directors. Hajin, the son of Chairman Kim Do-seon, is currently a director. He reported that this time his father had personally stated that the group would manage its own guild. One of those present said that they also know that this task has been entrusted entirely to the director. Hajin noted that this is an ambitious project entrusted to him personally. Therefore, he must live up to the expectations placed on him by his father. Among the candidates worthy of joining their guild, is there anyone truly influential? Even if they are not at the level of Lee Dae-soo or Kim Yoon-ho, they need at least someone close to these hunters. At least one. The man said that it was actually quite difficult. Most of the famous people were already members of the 3 largest guilds in the country. The rest received the best conditions in their own guilds. Hajin replied that that wasn't why he was asking them. If it doesn't work, you have to make it work. The young man raised his hand and asked if he could say something. Someone in the room said that this was not the level of conversation for Chief Hwang. Hajin said he was ready to listen to department head Hwang Chasun. The young man said that if we leave everything else in the country aside and judge only by fame, there is one person whose authority is comparable to Lee Dae-soo, Kim Yong-ho, and Kang Ji-young. Hajin asked who that was. Hwang Chasun said that everyone here had heard this name at least once. It was irregular Choi Chun-hyuk. Hajin agreed and was surprised. Why had he personally forgotten about this guy? He was the one who was able to hold back 5 D-class monsters at once, even though Lee Dae-soo himself said it was impossible. Hwang Chi-seon added that if they managed to recruit this guy, they would not only gain in terms of reputation, but also from a practical point of view, it would be hugely beneficial. Hajin agreed. Youth is about the ability to think outside the box. No wonder they say, young wine is poured into new wineskins. Unlike the old grumblers, Chief Hwang Chi-seon is young, so his mind is racing. Hajin suggested that this guy was under contract with the association. The contract probably had a clause prohibiting him from joining any guilds. How was Hwang Chi-seon going to lure him away? Chasun replied that he knew that. That is why all the major guilds that wanted to recruit him ended up giving up. However, despite certain difficulties, this guy could be recruited. Hajin asked what would happen if the plan failed. Hwang Chi-seon said that in that case, he would put his head on the line. Hajin smiled and said that he liked this young man's attitude. The director asked what the plan was for recruiting Cho Chun-hyuk. Hunting in the high-level zone in the Ilsen area. This zone is inhabited by particularly large monsters. Choo-hyuk looked around and saw no one else. The young man decided that in that case, he could fight at full strength. He decided to use a power weapon and activated Longsword Summon. Valkyrie Summon was also activated. The image of the girl appeared immediately, and she said she was ready to carry out her master's orders. Chu Chun-hyuk said that this was an excellent opportunity to test everything they had practiced. Sarah held her shield forward and gripped her sword tighter in her hand. The monster was approaching at high speed. The girl announced that she would use a shield attack and rush towards the monster. When the two forces collided, there was a powerful burst of energy. Sarah reported that the enemy was stunned. Chu Chun-hyuk activated his lightning flash skill and approached the monster from behind. Sarah did the same, only she was in front of the monster. The stunned monster was unable to move. The hunters prepared for a simultaneous attack. The mountain cleave skill was activated simultaneously. The attack was synchronized, which increased its power. The monster was destroyed. Choi Chun-hyuk asked how much time they had spent. Sarah replied, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. The effectiveness of the skills exceeded 100%. Chu Chun-hyuk said he was ready and that it was time to return before dawn. Unexpectedly, a gate appeared a few dozen meters away. Chu Chun-hyuk was surprised. Could spontaneous gates really appear at such a moment? Sarah said that it was the treasure gate. Choi Chun-hyuk asked what it was. The girl said that she had only been there a few times with Park Kang-ho, but she could say for sure that every time the master received extremely useful artifacts and skills there. For example, the power weapon and power amplifier were also obtained in the treasure gate. Sarah told the master that such dungeons were rare. If they missed this opportunity, it was unknown when another chance like this would come along. They should enter before the gate disappeared. Choo Chun-hyuk firmly stated that in that case, they would go in. As always in such cases, Choi Chun-hyuk activated the virtual map. The young man said that they were in a maze. If it weren't for his skill in cartography, they would have had a hard time. Sarah said that she was of little use here. Even Park Kang-ho, long considered the absolute ruler of the continent of Fravia, had found only 5 such gates in his entire life. Choo Chun-hyuk said that Sarah's presence was already a huge help. Choo Chun-hyuk activated real-time information viewing. The system requested a keyword for the search. The young man said, "Treasure Gate." The Treasure Gate is a repository of artifacts and abilities used by awakened beings from destroyed dimensions and worlds. There are no awakened beings inside the dungeons. These are extremely rare golden gates that appear with a negligible probability. Choo-hyuk decided that something was wrong here. What does it mean that there are no awakened beings? Usually, artifact repositories should have at least some kind of security system. Sarah asked, "Is something wrong here?" Cho Chun-hyuk replied that it was a trap. At first glance, everything looked normal, but if you went straight ahead, you could fall deep underground. Sarah suggested that they first need to determine which tiles are traps. Chue Chun-hyuk said that there was no need for that. Choo-hyuk activated his power weapon and summoned a mace, which immediately appeared in his hand. The young man struck the surface they were walking on with a crushing blow from the mace. At that moment, the trap tiles were destroyed and holes appeared. The young man said that if they only stepped on the remaining tiles, they could safely move forward. Suddenly, a huge stone ball rolled after the young people. They had to run away urgently. The young people managed to escape to the treasure chest. Moreover, it was already kindly opened. They received 2 amplifying stones and a dungeon gate generator powered by fossil fuel. Next, to overcome the next obstacle, they had to climb up and fly over the green slime. At a certain point along the way, a huge room appeared in front of the young people, at the end of which was something resembling an altar. A book lay on this altar. Sarah noticed that this place was much more spacious than all the previous ones. It seemed that there were no traps here. Choo Chun-hyuk was surprised. Was there a book instead of a chest now? The young man approached the book and said that the first was an object, the second was a skill. So this must be something similar. Choo Chun-hyuk reached for the book, but he couldn't take it because a protective barrier appeared. The system reported that the hunter did not meet the conditions for receiving the reward. Choo Chun-hyuk was surprised. What conditions were they talking about? Someone behind them said that they were the first visitors to the treasure dungeon on Earth. The young people turned around. Behind them stood Jade, the golden goblin. He said he was glad to meet them and added that he recognized a familiar face. Jade said that the girl had been here before with the previous user. Choo Chun-hyuk said that in games, golden goblins are just walking bags of gold. If he destroyed it, could he get the book? Jade said not to get excited. Even if he was gone, they wouldn't get the book. It would just disappear. Choo-hyuk asked how he could get it. Jade replied that it was very simple. They had to get permission from him. Choo-hyuk said that in that case, the golden goblin should give his permission quickly. Jade explained that his job was to help users of the second original system develop faster. Choo-hyuk asked how Jade knew this. The golden goblin said that anyone could find him, enter, and receive a reward. However, only one person could meet him, the user of the second original system. Choo-hyuk Choi suggested that he was not just a goblin and asked who Jade really was. Jade replied that he was created by the Lord of Creation, part of the main original system. He is not alive, but something like a system mechanism. Choo-hyuk asked, "Is the main original system also a conscious system like Jade?" The golden goblin said that the young man would have to find out for himself. This answer was beyond his competence. Choo-hyuk said that in that case, Jade should just let him take the treasure. The golden goblin said that something else had to happen first. Before opening the treasure, he would offer 2 options to choose from. 2 bags appeared in the golden goblin's hands. The first option was to choose 2 of the 5 legendary skills. The second option was to take one of the 3 basic skills of the previous user. Choi Chun-hyuk asked if he could choose Park Kang-ho's skill. Jade said that this was possible because the young man had inherited the system from him. The transfer was complete, so the young man received this privilege. Sarah told the gentleman that Park Kang-ho did not trust this golden goblin, so Cho Chun-hyuk should not blindly trust him either. The girl added that Jade was surely up to something bad. The green goblin asked, was the young man having difficulty choosing? He would choose the legendary skills. The chance of getting 2 legendary skills is lower than the chance of getting 1 main skill from the previous user. Cho Chun-hyuk asked, did Park Kang-ho also receive such privileges? Jade said that Park Kang-ho took control of the system himself, so he didn't get any bonuses. Choo-hyuk asked under what conditions the treasure dungeon gate would activate. Jade replied that they are activated when the user of the second original system reaches the second awakened stage. Choo-hyuk understood why Kichul hadn't even mentioned them. That worthless man never achieved his second awakening and died without developing his powers. The golden goblin asked if the young man wanted to know anything else. Choi Chun-hyuk replied that this was enough. The golden goblin took out the bags again and told the young man to make his choice. 2 legendary skills, the chance of obtaining which was close to 0. Or 1 main skill from the previous user? Shu Chun-hyuk said that there was nothing to think about. The young man decided to choose 1 skill from the previous user. Jade asked if the young man was sure. The opportunity to choose 2 legendary skills was an incredible privilege. The protagonist said that 1 skill from the previous user was more important to him than 2 legendary ones. The golden goblin said he had no objections. It was a very wise choice. The book opened and lit up. The golden goblin announced that he would now show the list of skills. Choi Chun-hyuk chose one of the suggested skills. The universal skill, Giant Incarnation, was selected. When this skill is used, the body size increases. Registration of a crystal is required for activation. This skill increases spellcasters to a size comparable to a monster. If you register the appropriate crystals, you can increase the number of people to 8. If you assemble a squad of reliable fighters, you can create an entire team of giants. Shu Chun-hyuk thought this was an incredibly useful skill. The golden goblin said it was time to say goodbye. Chu Chun-hyuk said that it had been quite a useful time, even though he didn't want to admit it. He added that they would see each other next time. Jade said that this was only the second stage of awakening. The young man was still far from his goal. He had to become stronger quickly. The golden goblin added that sooner or later, if the young man continued to grow and develop, he would encounter the Lord of Creation, and at that moment he would finally become complete. Chung Jae-hee prepared a delicious dinner. The brothers and sister began to eat. Shu Chun-hyuk was glad to have learned something new, but for some reason, it only made him more anxious. If the Lord of Creation created the golden goblin, then his help was also part of the Creator's will. If Park Kang-ho feared him, then there were good reasons for it. Did the Lord of Creation really want to help him? Yoonjung asked why her older brother was daydreaming again. Chu Chun-hyuk apologized and asked what his sister had just said. The girl reminded him that they had agreed to go to the amusement park on the weekend. Could they take her sister Jae-hee with them? It would be great if she could come with them. Euncho raised his hand and said he wanted that too. Chun-hyuk said he didn't mind, but that Jae-hee needed to rest over the weekend. The girl said she was fine. Jae-hee remarked that she also loves amusement parks. Cho Chun-hyuk asked if she was sure she would be okay. Jae-hee said that it would be interesting and that it would help her relieve stress. Euncho was delighted. That meant Jae-hee was coming with them. They would spend the weekend together. A man was playing golf in his room. His son stood obediently nearby. The golfer was Kim Do-seon, chairman of the Mirai Group. He asked how preparations for the guild were going, since Ha-jin wanted it so badly. Kim Do-seon noted that Ha-jin should not take this lightly under any circumstances. The chairman asked what had brought his son here at such an hour. Ha-jin said that he had actually come to ask his father for help. Kim Do-seon asked if his son had already come to him for support. The young man replied that he wanted to manage on his own. However, the person he was trying to recruit was directly connected to the chairman of the Association of the Awakened. This had caused complications. Kim Do-seon suggested that his son wanted to recruit the irregular Choi Chun-hyuk. Ha-jin admitted this and added that the chairman of the association was too serious an opponent for him. His father told his son to stop blindly banging his head against a wall, knowing that nothing would come of it. Instead, it would be wise to establish his boundaries and ask for help. Ha-jin explained that the main obstacle to his recruitment was the association. If this problem could be solved, he could handle the rest himself. His father said he understood. It seemed he would have to invite the chairman of the association to dinner. Kim Do-sun told his son to remember that if, despite all his efforts, Hajin was unable to recruit Choi Chun-hyuk, he would have to resign from his position. Seoul's Jamsil area, Joy World. The young people arrived at a real amusement park. The children were delighted. Yoon-chul said he had never seen such a tall structure before. Jae-hee asked Yoon-chul where he wanted to start. The boy replied that he wanted to start with the roller coaster. Jae-hee asked what Yoon-jung wanted to start with. The girl replied that she wanted to start with the Viking. Jae-hee asked what Choi Chun-hyuk wanted to start with. The young man replied that he was ready to start with the gyro drop. Yoon-chul said he had changed his mind and would go on the hero drop with his brother. Chu-hyuk said that they could do both. Today they would ride whatever they wanted, so there was no need to worry. Yoon-chul was delighted. Jung Jae-hee asked if Choi Chun-hyuk was trying too hard. The young man replied that he had recently distanced himself from his younger siblings due to his heavy workload. However, if they were happy, so was he. A group of people appeared in the square. Many of them were wearing business suits. Chu-hyuk was surprised. What kind of security was this? So, he must be some kind of important person, not just an ordinary person. Among the arrivals was a boy. Chu Chun-hyuk asked if Jang Jae-hee knew this man. The girl replied that it was Lee Byung-hun, the eldest son of the head of Shin-sung Corporation, the #1 company in South Korean business. Chu-hyuk thought that this was the very corporation run by Lee Jong-jin. Now he understood why this face seemed familiar. This was the man who would turn Korea upside down in the future? Next to him stood a man in a large bear costume with balloons in his hands. The bear told someone that the target had just been confirmed. She had entered the amusement park. The targets for elimination were his son and 5 bodyguards. The interlocutor asked if there were any possible variables. The interlocutor replied, 2 adults and 2 children. There are no variables at this time. The children were happily riding the rides. While riding, our hero felt as if his strength was leaving him. After that, Chang Jae-hee told the children to come quickly to eat. The food was already on the table. Yoon-jung was delighted that there was even chicken. Yoon-cheol was delighted that there were churros. Jae-hee said she had specially ordered only things that children like. Chu-hyuk thought that playing with children was also hard work. Jang Jae-hee was simply the best nanny. The man suggested that his son, Sang-woo, take a short break and then continue on. Sang-woo and his father sat down nearby to rest. Chu Chun-hyuk thought that these security guards were getting on his nerves. Of all the places, they had to sit right here. At one point, Choi Chun-hyuk and Sang-woo's eyes met. The young man wondered, what is this boy looking at? On the roof of one of the amusement park buildings, there were criminals hiding in animal costumes. They were conducting secret surveillance using binoculars. One of the criminals asked if Purple had checked everything. The guy sitting next to the target is Cho Chun-hyuk. His partner asked who he was. Purple replied that Cho Chun-hyuk was an irregular. The observer said that an irregular is an unexpected factor. This man seems to have no connection to the target, but if something goes wrong, everything could go awry. Purple asked, "Are you really suggesting we change the plan, Black?" Black said that was out of the question. However, if a new factor had appeared, it would have to be taken into account. If Choi Chun-hyuk suddenly intervenes, Yellow and Blue will deal with him. Green should be able to take care of the regular guards on his own. Purple and he were quite capable of eliminating the target. Yoon-chul continued to enjoy his chicken. At one point, he noticed that the boy at the next table was watching him intently. Yoon-chul handed the chicken to the boy and asked if he wanted to eat together. "This stuff is very crispy and delicious," he added. Yoon-chul said that he usually had to eat alone, but today he would make an exception and share. Sang-woo looked at the tempting piece of chicken with appetite. The guards noticed the boy who had decided to talk to Sang-woo. One of the guards told them not to offer the young gentleman questionable food or strike up a conversation with him. This was a warning. Yoon-chul was confused and apologized. Chun-hyuk was indignant. Had these guys completely lost their minds? Why were they scaring a child? The security guard said that this young man was behaving rudely. How dare he? The head of security told Kim to calm down. In places like this, children play and interact with each other, and that's normal. The man apologized and suggested that his guards had frightened these people. The man introduced himself. His name was Lee Byung-hun. Chu Chun-hyuk shook his hand and told him his name. As they shook hands, he realized that he was not dealing with an awakened person. Lee Byung-hun told Sang-woo to say hello too. Yoon-chul asked Lee Byung-hun if his son could also eat some chicken. Lee Byung-hun said he didn't mind and called his son over. Sang-woo sat down at the table with his brother and sister and began to eat the chicken with pleasure. Lee Byung-hoon and Cho Chun-hyuk sat next to them at the neighboring table. The tycoon explained that his family had strictly monitored their diet since childhood. Therefore, when his son sees chicken, he cannot resist it. Cho Chun-hyuk said that Lee Byung-hoon could spoil his son from time to time. The man replied that for such purposes, they sometimes invite personal chefs from the US and China. Lee Byung-hoon added that the young man has very cute children and a beautiful wife. Choi Chun-hyuk almost choked when he heard this. The young man explained that they were his younger brother and sister. The girl sitting next to them was their housekeeper, whom he had hired. Lee Byung-hoon was surprised. Did Choi Chun-hyuk really come to the amusement park on his day off with his housekeeper? The young man replied that the children liked her very much. Our hero noticed a smile on his interlocutor's face and thought that it annoyed him. What else could he have imagined? Lee Byung-hoon said that he didn't want to disturb this family anymore, and turning to his son, added that it was time for them to leave. Yunchul suggested that Sang-woo meet up again sometime and play together. Sang-woo agreed and said goodbye until the next time. The criminals on the roof of the neighboring building reported that the target was starting to move. That meant it was time for them to move as well. However, they were to act only when the target was far enough away from Cho Chun-hyuk. Lee Byung-hoon asked his son if he was upset. The boy replied that he was not upset. His father said that Sang-woo's expression gave a lot away. He had friends at school, didn't he? Sang-woo admitted that he had friends at school, but he wasn't sure if they were real friends. There, he was the grandson of the head of the Shinsung group. His father explained that school is a miniature version of society. In any society, there is always a hierarchy. They are at the top. Lee Byung-hoon added that friends are just an illusion. The boy noticed a man in black in front of him, hiding his face behind a mask. The stranger raised his sword and drew it from its sheath. Lee Byung-hoon looked back and saw another man, just like him, behind him. The guards formed a circle to protect the boss and his son. The head of security, Mr. Kim, shouted that it was an ambush and that they had to protect the boss. Kim asked who they were and demanded that they identify themselves immediately. Sang-woo was frightened and clung to his father. The whole chicken was eaten, and Choi Chun-hyuk said he was about to burst. Yunchul noted that he was also very full. The younger brother remarked that it was the most delicious food in the world. He asked his older brother if he could play with Sang-woo some more. Chu-hyuk refused. The child was surprised. Chu-hyuk explained that Sang-woo probably hadn't been out with his dad in a long time, and they shouldn't take away this precious time from them. Suddenly, someone screamed in fear. The young people were surprised and looked in that direction. The frightened people shouted that there were criminals there and ran in different directions. Someone demanded that the police be called immediately. Choi Chun-hyuk was surprised. What could have happened there? He told his brother and sister that they also needed to leave quickly. Yunchul was surprised. Did his brother really want to run away? Why didn't he want to help those people? After all, Cho Chun-hyuk was very strong. The young man replied that the police would be here soon. There are strong people among the police too. Chu-hyuk added that he didn't have to get involved in this matter. Yunchul pointed out that no one was stronger than his older brother. What if the police were late? Right now, only Chu-hyuk could deal with the bad guys. Jang Ji-hee said that Yunchul was right. Choi Chun-hyuk could help people at least until the police arrived, and she would stay with the children. The girl added that she would defend Yoon-jong together with Yoon-chol. There were already casualties among the guards. Mr. Kim continued to defend his master, but they were surrounded. Kim realized that the attackers were from Rainbow. Kim asked why they were targeting the chairman. Weren't they supposed to attack only the awakened? Black replied that they were not only hunting the awakened. Until now, they had only received orders for the awakened, which is why they had that impression. Black added that they did not choose their targets. Lee Byung-hoon asked if someone had ordered his elimination. Who sent them here? Black replied that Lee Byung-hoon would find out about that in the afterlife, and that it was time for him to finish his shift. The villain swung his sharp blade at the tycoon. However, something unexpected happened. The hunter Choi Chun-hyuk appeared. Our hero swung his magic sword and threw the villain aside. Choi Chun-hyuk blocked Black's path, making it clear that he would protect the man and his child. The liaison said that in the end, everything went wrong. He had a bad feeling about it from the very beginning. The liaison asked Black what was going on here. Black reported that the hunter Cho Chun-hyuk had intervened and ruined their work. Cho Chun-hyuk said that if it weren't for Sang-woo, he wouldn't have interfered. The protagonist said that it was dangerous here now, so Lee Byung-hoon should move to a safe place. Red began to move around the perimeter, trying to prevent the target from escaping. Chu Chung-hyuk quickly changed his position and deactivated Red with a punch to the jaw. This was enough for Mr. Lee Byung-hoon to move to a safer place. Now our hero was surrounded by members of the Rainbow Group. Chu Chun-hyuk told the guys not to get distracted while he was in front of them. The protagonist added that these colors were completely unsuitable for such a rainbow team. They should have chosen shades like in a real rainbow. Black asked why the young man got involved, since he has no connection to that corporation. Chu Chung-hyuk admitted that he really had no connection, and that it was not a matter of justice at all. Black wondered why the hunter was doing this then. Chu Chun-hyuk activated the glowing ball. The copy field was activated. Our hero acquired the skills of the one called Black. However, this was the skill tree of someone he had already met once before. The protagonist thought that this guy was indeed who he thought he was. The situation was becoming very interesting. Black shouted for the guy to attack. However, our hero effectively dodged the attack. Chu Chun-hyuk jumped high and kicked Yellow in the head with both feet. Chu Chun-hyuk said that if he had a weapon in his hands, he would have acted differently. The protagonist added that in that case, none of those present would have had their heads left on their shoulders. However, today was his first time going for a walk with the younger ones. Chu Chun-hyuk noted that he should not show children how people are really dealt with. Black asked what that meant. Chu Chun-hyuk replied that he would not destroy them. He suggested that they fight him here to the end, or that Black take his wounded men and get out of there. Purple and Yellow were deactivated and lying on the ground. Green and Black were still standing. Purple got up and asked if Black wasn't going to believe his words. Would this guy really let them go if they said they were leaving? Green said Purple was right. Besides, if they failed the mission, Rainbow's reputation would suffer. Chu Chung-hyuk said that the three of them couldn't do anything against him. 2 of the 5 were already deactivated. Did they really think they could take him on? Black said they were retreating. They had to take Red and Yellow with them. Green said they couldn't just run away. Black replied that now is not the time to discuss anything. They must do as they are told. Black added that he wouldn't warn them that they would meet again, and noted that they never meet a second time. Lee Byung-hoon asked why Cho Chun-hyuk let these people go just like that. Chu Chun-hyuk replied that he offered them a choice not just out of boredom. If he hadn't given them a chance to back down, they would have fought to the last. There could have been casualties, even among civilians. The protagonist asked if that was what the rich man wanted. Lee Byung-hoon replied that that was not what he meant. By this time, reinforcements had arrived, and there were many more guards. The head of security asked the young gentleman if he was all right. He replied that as soon as they received the message about the attack, they immediately arrived with the guards on alert. Lee Byung-hoon asked in surprise why they had only arrived now. The awakened guards said that young Master Byung-ho had unexpectedly called them. He apologized and admitted that he was a little late. Lee Byung-hoon said that it couldn't be called a little late. Because of that little, he and his son could have been seriously injured. Lee Byung-hoon pointed to our hero and said that if it weren't for this guy, he would be in big trouble. However, there was no one left where Lee Byung-hoon was pointing. Choi Chun-hyuk had managed to leave. The next day came. The young man reflected on what had happened the day before. Our hero was sure that Black was someone he knew. He wasn't a villain. So why was he doing such things? Was this his second job? The young man thought that it was time to activate the portal generator in the dungeon. When he received it in the treasure dungeon, he thought that portals would start appearing everywhere. However, there was no sign of that yet. Choi Min approached our hero and greeted him. He asked if Choi Chun-hyuk was busy. The protagonist asked what was going on. Choi Min took out a can of beer and offered to drink, since they hadn't seen each other in a long time. The young men sat down at the table and continued their conversation while drinking beer. Chu Chun-hyuk asked what had happened to Choi Min after all. He didn't look very well today. Choi Min said that there had been changes in their guild. Their guild was merging with another guild. This had been discussed for a long time. Most hunters with the second awakened form and above had renegotiated their contracts on better terms. For those like him with the first awakened form, the terms were getting worse. They wanted to save on salaries. Choi Min said that if anyone is unhappy, they are welcome to terminate their contract. Chu Chun-hyuk asked what Choi Min was going to do. The young man replied that for now, he would continue hunting as part of the party and look for a new guild. Choi Min admitted that they had been thrown out like trash. Chu Hyuk now understood why his friend had suggested they go for a drink, because he was feeling down. Choi Min admitted that he suddenly felt like drinking. But apart from Choi Chun-hyuk, he didn't want to do it with anyone else. Chu Hyuk said that maybe it was for the best, and added that Choi Min shouldn't worry. The protagonist suggested taking advantage of the opportunity and joining his mercenary group. Chu Chun-hyuk said that he hadn't suggested it earlier because Cholmin was already in another guild. But for him, this guy had always been his #1 candidate. Cholmin thanked him for the offer, but said that he felt awkward calling Choi Chun-hyuk guild leader. The protagonist said that formalities were unnecessary here. Chu-hyuk added that officially, he was the leader, and in that case, Chol-min would be his deputy. But they could address each other as usual. Chol-min was still hesitant and thinking about something. In the end, he agreed, but asked if Choi Chun-hyuk would pressure him using his authority. The protagonist laughed in response. Chu Chun-hyuk asked if he started doing that. Would Chol-min put up with it? Chol-min said that in that case, he would respond appropriately. At that moment, the dungeon portal generator lit up,